Yeah. More than just a pretty face. I'll keep you on point.
Not so subtle clue. 2 people in our waiting room. Kim and Stephanie. With the other 2 who won't make it, I think we're only waiting for 1 other person then. Good morning, welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat again to everyone. Just as other folks have been joining in. Great. 6 responses to the survey so far and counting.
Great. We are going to go in about 30 seconds here, so we'll just wait to see if anyone final person joins. Does anybody see anybody missing? Missing a best friend, a coworker, confidant?
Yeah, Michael, I have 21 participants, not including us.
Great. So we had 2 accounted for who wouldn't be here. So maybe we're just 1 unaccounted for if they join late.
Maybe.
That's absolutely no problem at all.
And I'll certainly check names of folks as we get into the intro section. So take it away.
Cool. So let's go ahead and get started. As we've been mentioning for just the last few people who came in, we have a survey that we'd ask you to take. What this is it just helps us gauge what you're interested in learning, what your expectations are for this course. And then we also have a survey at the end of the course, sometime next week, that it helps us understand whether or not people understood all the concepts we discussed and how we can improve better and better. So that's something we like to do. It's also a great way to stall for time as people's joining first thing on a Monday morning. So I want to say thank you, everybody, for joining. We do have a great group of 20 odd people here today. What we're doing is we're going through a yellow belt certification course for Lean and Six Sigma. So what we'll be doing today is introducing the concepts of Lean and a lot of what Lean entails. And then later on in these courses, we'll be peppering in different other concepts surrounding Lean and Six Sigma, how these 2 methodologies can be combined to do all kinds of things, from improving your own processes to understanding root causes of why things are happening. I got a list of everyone's projects. A lot of them had to do with streamlining processes, how to make them more efficient, faster. A lot of them had to do with reducing errors in kind of this admin space. So these concepts, these tools that we'll discuss will be really, really helpful in, implementing improvements into your processes and hopefully getting something tangible immediately out of this this course. So it's a 15-hour course that we're going to do. We're going to do 3 days this week for 3 hours, and then 2 days next week for 3 hours as well. So what we'll do today is we look at our agenda is we'll set some ground rules. We'll talk about kind of the virtual environment that we're in, what we want to get in terms of the learning outcomes. That's where the survey is helpful. And then also looking at how we can apply some of these tools and concepts immediately into some of your projects. Sound good? So course ground rules. I don't know how many people have been in a virtual training since COVID. It's a little different than your workshop in a classroom, but essentially what we try to do is you have to bridge this engagement gap that you have now that you're probably sitting at home, in a different environment. So we like to have cameras on as much as possible. I understand there's bandwidth concerns with that. So if things are slowing down, if it sounds like I'm going through a tunnel, turn your camera off. I'd rather you hear and see the video than see your face. I'd rather you get something out of this than me get to know what you look like. But it does help and keep people engaged. So we really like that. We want to, like we said, have focus on the workshop. Please stop, ask questions, take our time through these slides. We've got a lot of slides. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them, but what we want to do is make sure that you understand the slides that we do get through and that you feel comfortable applying these concepts, these tools into something tangible for you and your team. It's also just being an adult, right? If you have interruptions, take your time. I've got a 15-month-old running around, and you'll probably hear her screaming at some point. Just go with it. And, if we do have some questions that take up too much time, we'll take it to the parking lot. We'll talk about it offline. But going forward, what we really want to do is build engagement. We've given you that canvas in one of my emails early last week, I think it was, maybe the week before. We've got this canvas. It's a bunch of tools. We're not going to get into them today, but they're there for you all to use, and we'll break out into breakout rooms, and you'll see that we can really start engaging in all these things. And then finally, use the chat window. So David's going to be posting periodically things within the chat window. If you have a question, you don't want to interrupt, but you still, it's bugging you, put it in the chat. David will get there. We kind of do this thing, we call it facilitator producer. So I'm going to be the one going mostly through the slides. David's going to take his turn as well. But David's my producer. So he's going to do all the stuff behind the scenes. He'll be the unsung hero. And hopefully that creates a very smooth learning environment for us over these 15 hours.
Taking advantage of the chat, just to add on that, taking advantage of the chat to that point, sometimes as a teacher facilitator, you get in that groove. So yeah, rather than interrupting, pop that question when it's fresh in your mind in that chat. I'll be monitoring. I'll be, navigating Michael a little bit. Hey, we got to pause, circle back. We got a question in the chat. Also, I think there's a slide coming up to talk about the Zoom environment, get you comfortable, familiar. Perfect. Look at that. Take it away, Michael.
Yeah, so as we might have mentioned if you were on the call with us, this is a new environment for us as well. We've used Microsoft Teams. We're used to training in classrooms. Obviously, we're shifting towards, delivering content in a virtual environment. So we're getting familiar with it. We want you all to be familiar. I don't know in your organization if you use Zoom or MS Teams or WebEx or any of the other platforms. So just very quickly, we have 3 models that are neither David nor I here, and it shows, with these very attractive people, where all of the settings are for your benefit. So we have mute. Feel free if you have a question to unmute yourself and ask it. It won't hurt my feelings. It's right there on the bottom left. If you want to share or stop sharing your video, it is right next to the mute button on the bottom left. If you do have to share screen, we might ask you to do that later on in this course as we start breaking out into breakout rooms and returning to the larger group. That's dead center in the middle, and the icon is green. We have that chat window right there, right next to it on the right, that you can just pop in any questions to David offline. And then if you want to give me a smiley face or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whatever it may be, that's on the right. And then if you ever want to leave, it's there on the bottom right. And as we mentioned, we're recording. So if you want to go back and look at these slides, if you want to share it with somebody who you like and say, man, this was really great training, we're going to provide that for you after this training. Right now it is actively recording for us. Great. So a lot of front matter stuff here that we'll get into the content soon. We wanted to introduce ourselves so you know that we're not just pulled off the streets. So what we'll do is we'll go through quickly, David and I, introduce who we are. We'd also like to hear just a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you are, what your name is, and what your expectations are. You know what? Maybe table this expectation just because we'll bring it back when we do the survey. So if you can talk a little bit about your problem, the project that you brought into this workshop as well, that would be great too. So I will start. My name is Michael Parent. I'm most known as being Colleen Stacy's younger brother. So if you know Colleen Stacy, we are siblings and we grew up together for several years. I have a degree in engineering from the University of Michigan. I have an MBA from the College of William and Mary, and Lawrence Tech has this program, which is a Master Lean Six Sigma program. So essentially, this is the highest designation you can get to do the kind of stuff that we're talking about today. So that's kind of the academic stuff. In terms of work credentials, I actually received a 40 under 40 from the American Society for Quality in 2021. And then I'm also certified manager of quality and organizational excellence. So very involved with work, consulting work, obviously, but also kind of the professional organizations, particularly the American Society for Quality. So I see David was somebody, I see Tammy was raising their hand. Question?
I was clapping.
Oh, thank you. Clapping,
Okay.
raising your hand. David, why don't you take it away? David did not go to the University of Michigan.
No, I went to the University of Florida. Go Gators. Some of those background credentials, professionals. So I have a background within project management, as well as chemical and process engineering. More recently, partnering with University of South Florida, went through their customer experience program. Also having a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt through Florida Atlantic University. Professional background as far as work experience, a lot within manufacturing, healthcare, human resources. I enjoy writing about the professional work that I do. The applications for Lean and Six Sigma for problem solving arch way beyond just manufacturing. I have an article that I'll be writing and posting here in the next couple of weeks about the Lean approach to hospitality and amusement parks. So it's just, observing how flow happens today in a business environment, and how might it flow better, not only for a customer experience, but for the team member, for the employee experience, and just enjoying work a little bit better. As you'll see, Michael and I like to make this approachable. It's not all about if you've had a background with or exposure to Lean or Six Sigma. Some facilitators, coaches, they focus so much on the Japanese language. While there are roots and history in that, let's not focus on so much roots and history, but how it applies to your business. So looking forward to being a part of this with you all today.
Thanks, David. We've got a list. Rather than going out round robin, I'm going to just go down the list, and I'll dial back to the slide here that we had. If you could start for us, Alex, and just give us a brief intro. And also, I'm just curious, how well do you all know each other? Are you all working together, or are these complete strangers on the call as well?
They are not complete strangers. My name is Alex. I work in the donor eligibility department. I review documents from next of kin, medical records, documents from the LPOs, which is like gift of life and stuff like that. They do tissue and organs. I know mostly everybody besides a couple people who are new, because we fully work from home. Our project it's called SharePoint right now, and that's where all of our documents are, our SOPs, just stuff like that we use as a department, and we want to minimize all of that and easier for us to use. So we're trying to put that on WorkVivo. It's just very hard to keep everything updated as it should be. So that is our project. And my workshop expectation is to learn a lot and how to be a better leader.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Let's move over to Arthur. Artur, A-R-T-U-R, Artur?
Yep.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Great.
So my name is Artur. I work in distribution, tissue distribution at Eversight. I'm the supervisor. I manage 4 coordinators, along with Doreen, my manager. What we're looking to do within tissue distribution. There's a lot of open lines of communication and a lot of processes that coordinators need to learn, and we're looking to try to automate those as much as possible, as well as minimize any mistakes that can happen, and just kind of create fail safes within the department to just prevent any disruptions in shipments to our surgeons and our customers. And yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's move over to Ashley. Ashley Vanderdonk.
Yep, Ashley Vanderdonk. That's me.
Great.
My role is manager of clinical partner relations. So I manage the relationship between our call center at Eversight and our organ procurement organizations within the various states that we work with. That's my main role. I do a lot of other things too. So the project that we're going to focus on is streamlining and improving our quality improvement process within the donation support center. So that's what we're looking to do with this.
Great.
And then if I'm not mistaken, you wanted us to wait on our workshop expectations, right?
Yeah, why not for the time being? We'll circle back to those for sure. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Who else do we have? How about Brandon? He's been with us the whole time. Hey, Brandon.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
I'm Brandon. I'm the manager of recovery in New Jersey. I just want to have more open communication between different types of hospitals and recovery areas, and pretty much just streamline it so we don't have to call 18 people to get one donor. And my workshop expectation is to learn a lot more about this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. How about Brenna?
Thanks. My name is Brenna Wheeler. I'm the marketing operations manager for Eversight. I'm based out of Michigan, but work mostly from home. Under my purview is anything from automations, email marketing, website, user experience, things like that, as well as our CRMs. We have multiple that we use at this time. And my plan or the problem to solve would be standardization of our naming conventions within the marketing team. So inclusive of email names, graphic file, content file, webinar naming, all that. Right now, it's a challenge for us to find things and assure that I have the final most recent version of something. And additionally, standardizing our naming conventions on campaigns, philanthropic donor segments, and emails will help us within our CRMs develop more robust dashboards for cross-departmental analysis. Right now, it's really hard to connect those dots. So that's my project.
Great. Thank you. How about Colleen? Hey, Colleen.
Hey, brother. My name is Colleen Stacy. I am one of the night shift supervisors in the DSC. We are responsible for getting the referrals, making calls to hospitals, funeral homes, calling families to get consent, and dispatching our technicians. And then I'm kind of under Ashley's umbrella where we are streamlining our QA process.
Great. Thank you. How about Dana?
Hi there, I'm Dana Owens. I'm Director of Tissue Recovery. So our recovery staff consists of 35 to 40 recovery technicians over 4 states. So I work about 50% of the time from home and 50% of the time from any of those locations. And our project is, or mine, and Brandon's going to be helping me out with this since he's also tissue recovery, is looking at our shipping processes through all of these different locations and trying to make them more timely, more effective, and be able to actually guarantee our shipment times to get the tissue to our labs.
Well, great. Thank you for that. How about Dawn?
Hi, I'm Dawn, and I am the day shift manager. I was just recently promoted, so I'm the day shift manager of the DSC. And what do I do is I'm still kind of trying to figure that out a little bit with some of the responsibilities, but basically I manage the day shift. And part of what Colleen had mentioned, where we're talking to the families, obtaining consent, we get the referrals, and we dispatch cases. And one of my biggest things is that Erin and I are working on also is talking about expectations for our team. But our project is under the same umbrella that Colleen had mentioned and Ashley Vanderdonk. The biggest thing is we're wanting to streamline our QA process.
Great, thank you. And how about Doreen?
Good morning. I'm Doreen. I am the manager of tissue distribution. And I manage the team that distributes tissue. We send corneas around across the country and around the world. So figuring out the best place to put the tissue. And then manage the shipping and logistics around that. I'm working with Archer. Our project, again, is just kind of looking at our processes, communications and all that, and seeing how we can make improvements and streamline those.
Great, thank you. I love the reductiveness of your title. I'm the manager of tissue distribution, and I manage the distribution of tissue. So thank you for that. I also just appreciate everyone who's on camera. It really brings you all to life on my screen. So thank you. Let's go to Erin.
Good morning, I'm Erin. I am the night shift manager for the DSC. So I am Dawn just 12 hours later. I'm going to be working with Ashley, Dawn, and Colleen on we're looking at our QA process and trying to streamline that for our customers.
Great, thank you. Where are we going next? I think it's Julie.
Good morning. I'm Julie. I'm the director of donor eligibility and the donation support center. So kind of the first and last steps, almost last steps of the processes. So I am going to be working alongside of donor eligibility and helping to get those resources in a friendly space that's easier to grab with less confusion.
Great, thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
And how about Kate?
Good morning, Kate Ash. I'm a training specialist in the clinical education and training department, which includes Lauren, Patty, and Annalie, who you'll hear from in a moment. I create and manage training content and deliver that through various forms. One of them is virtual, so I'm kind of watching you guys for more ideas to further develop my own style. And in addition to that, I manage or do a lot of reports on performance metrics for staff. The project that our team is working on is going to be working towards converting our physical training forms to an electronic format, ideally. So we're hoping to get some information from that. Thanks.
Great. Sounds fantastic. How about Kim?
Good morning. I am Kim Trasick, and I'm the manager of the donor eligibility department. Excuse me, and along with Tammy, Julie, and Alex, we will be looking to streamline all of our documents that we currently have in our SharePoint, potentially moving them over to a different platform.
Great, thank you. The next one on the list is L. Johnson. I don't know the first name, but their last name is Johnson.
That's me. Good morning. My name's Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi. I'm the Director of Clinical Education and Training. There are a few people from my team on this call. Kate just introduced herself. Annalie and Patty are on this call and in this group as well. We are going to be working on developing a process and implementing electronic record storage or converting to electronic record storage for all of the clinical official records of training, which is a regulated area for our industry. And so we want to use this project to make sure we're really on top of everything we can do to make this the best process possible for all of the internal customers. You know, everybody's going to have different needs for what process will work best for them. We want to make sure we take all of that into account, as well as picking the best access point that works for everyone. And we're excited to use this process to look at it from every angle.
Great. Thank you, Lauren Johnson. How about Lynn?
Good morning. I am Lynn, and I am the Quality Assurance and Improvement Specialist for the Michigan location. The problem that or issue we want to look at is to try to streamline communication between the two departments of donor eligibility and the donor service center or donor support center. We've had some issues with authorizations, and we want to try to streamline that to not have so many interruptions for both departments.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. I think Melissa is next.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I am a senior QI specialist with Lynn, and I'm working with Lynn and Brett, who's not here today, on our project to streamline communication with the DSC and DE.
Great, thank you. How about Nick? Nicholas? Do you prefer Nick? Do you prefer Nicholas?
Nick is fine. I'm the manager of tissue processing. We prepare tissue for surgeries. And our project is, we also get requests for research. So we would like to streamline the communication and kind of the format in which we get those research requests, so we can handle those, because it's a big juggling act to kind of deal with surgical and research. So just to make that better, myself and Stephanie, she's on here as well, we're both gonna be working on that project.
Great, thank you. I see you called in from Stephanie's iPhone as well. That's
so we're in the same room. We're just trying to deal. We only got one camera though, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
I will turn the camera to her when it's her turn to talk.
great, great. Well, glad to have you, Nick. How about Annalie?
Hi, thank you. I'm Annalie Sturgeon, and I am in the Clinical Education and Training Department. I just joined the team in October, and I'll be working with Kate, Patty, and Lauren on the conversion to the electronic record storage.
Great, thank you. Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patty. As Annalie just mentioned, she's one of my teammates in our department. I am a training specialist with the Clinical Education and Training Department. And as previously mentioned, we're looking to kind of streamline our training records into a more electronic format.
Great, thank you, Patricia. And then Tammy, excuse me, the last one.
Hi, I'm Tammy Thompson. And I know pretty much everybody on here. There's a few people that are newer that I haven't met. I'm the supervisor for donor eligibility and work with Kim and Alex. And our project, as they had mentioned, is just kind of streamlining our internal documents for training and being able to label them so they're easy to find, and potentially switching to a better platform. It's not utilized the way it should be because I think it's very difficult to find things. So that's what we're hoping to do.
Thank you very much. So thanks everybody. That's all the projects. I hope you all learned a little bit about what's going on in your organization. A lot of the times we do this and people don't even know what's going on right next to them, even as they're working on people. So obviously there's a huge push, it sounds like, for digitization. Obviously there's a lot of projects that overlap here. So I'm really excited. I think there's definitely some things that I can think of right now where we'll definitely be able to help many of you with your projects. David, I want to ask you your thoughts on some of the projects you've heard.
You know, what really excited me the most is that there's collaboration among these projects, that, you know, no one person really sounds like they're working on a project by themselves, which is a good thing. Why is that a good thing, right? It's for that dynamic of thinking, you know, ideas. Ideation doesn't necessarily come from, you know, one person alone. It's kind of the combination of ideas that may lead toward that ultimate solution. So I'm really excited to hear that everybody kind of has a project buddy, if you will, if not multiple, because that's going to help the learning. Everybody's probably going to receive and hear the learning a little bit differently. That's again, the beauty of recording this. So you can go back and review and refresh it. You know, while there might not be a textbook, you know, to go along with this kind of stuff, the slides, the recordings. It's going to help. It really excited me, that digital transformation, right? Going from paper records, paper processes, and then of course, keeping in mind, right, with that medical environment, there's that regulated aspect. So I'm sure as you look to go digital, there are going to be those requirements. You can't necessarily just start working within Google Forms, right? We have to protect customers, clients, that privacy factor. So maybe some of those decision factors, I start to think about a table or a matrix of what is critical to quality as you start looking at platforms to select or to eliminate platforms from as an option to evaluate if I'm making sense and tracking with some of these projects. So to me, it's exciting that we're looking at streamlining communication, how to automate. This is going to be a fun several sessions.
Great. Thanks for that, David. Our course expectations, here's what it is. We're going to try to have as much fun as possible. David and I do this a lot. We try to have fun because it would be a grind for us if we just showed you slide after slide after slide and it's death by PowerPoint. So what we're going to do, that's probably one of the longest slogs that we're going to get through this entire course is what we've just faced. We're going to have slides with memes in it. We're going to have some games to play. We're going to try to keep you engaged as much as possible. Our goal is to be more fun than the cell phone next to you. And that's what we're going to try to do for you. So going forward, just looking at our schedule, we're jam-packed, right? We've talked about that we're going to do 5 3-hour sessions over the next 2 weeks. Everything that's in green is something that we have scheduled out. That's going to be a little fun game or fun activity. So as you can see, yeah, maybe Wednesday the 25th is a longer day than the other ones, but we're going to have some things and we're going to try to keep you engaged as well. One of our learning expectations is what we really want you to do is apply the key elements and the standardizing of the process. That's a big part of the things that you're going to hear from us today and going forward is standardization. And I'm happy to hear that a lot of people have already talked about standardization as part of their projects. A lot of what we're going to talk about are tools. You can use this tool to do this thing. You can use this tool to do that thing. But it's very important also is to understand how and why to apply these tools and what you can achieve out of them. So obviously what we're all about here is improving performance. And we want to make sure that you can walk away from this feeling confident that you can go on Thursday, the 26th and put these things into practice. And then obviously it's not just about improvement, but it's about critical thinking. It's about problem solving. And obviously we can apply that to a process. So those are some of our learning expectations. At the end of this, we'll get a certificate that looks something like this. I stole Colleen's name because I felt comfortable doing that. But essentially, we've got a nice certification. It will be industry recognized. So you can go around and say, hey, I took a yellow belt Lean Six Sigma course, and other people in the quality field will know what that means. So just to let you know, you'll be getting one of those. And now, David, I'm going to ask you to share your screen with some of our survey results and maybe throw that link in the chat window for anyone who has not participated in our survey yet.
Perfect. That sounds like a plan. Okay, here we go. Share. And
19 responses, great.
19 responses. I'll share that link again. Some of my my chat window disappeared on me, so bear with me.
It's now on top of your shared screen.
There we go.
Yeah.
Booyah. Okay. So let's talk through it. We're not going to talk through necessarily if questions were answered wrong, because again, this is the pre-quiz, right? What knowledge do you bring in with you, and then how can we partner with you and transfer knowledge? So first up, standardization, that is true. Okay. 5 whys, that is true. Okay.
It's good to see. Everybody must be familiar a little bit with 5 whys. Has everyone had experience with that? I'm just curious. Yeah. Slight nods from
A lot
Lynn.
of us have read a book that had that concept in it.
What was the book called?
Don't ask me, I can't remember.
But
But I just know, I know that it had the 5 whys in it. I know that I read a book with that, and it
Great.
had to do with a bunch of people at Eversight. So
great.
Perfect. Yeah, next up, affinity diagramming. So, the right answer is C. To sort through, organize a lot of ideas, opinions, and issues. So we're going to have the opportunity to align everybody to that over the next several sessions. All right. Next up, what is an A3 report? Okay. So an A3 report is, documenting progress and decisions. And it's also a project management tool. So it's also happens to be a sheet of paper size, but it's not so much, that's like the title. Why is it called an A3? But really, and we'll see some examples today of what an A3 report really is. It is helping to summarize, like, what's the background? What's the issue we're trying to solve, right? And then as you go forward, I don't know about you, but on occasion in my journey, I've noticed you come to a meeting. Why are we here in this meeting? We spend a bunch of time summarizing previous decisions, and the meeting's halfway over and you still have ground to cover. So by organizing your thoughts using something like an A3 one-page report, it really helps to keep a team on track. It's not the only way of doing that. It's just a way that we really prescribed to. 8 wastes. This was kind of a tricky one. Under processing is not one of the 8 wastes. So, haha, gotcha. It's a false one. Okay. But we're going to cover what are the 8 wastes, how to help, walk your workplace, whether it's in the office or on your desktop, and identify some waste. So as you're looking at your projects, you're probably already aware of what those wastes are. And now we're just going to be able to put a name to the waste and help focus on and reducing and eliminating. Okay. The purpose of lean is to eliminate waste. Yes, but really it's false. It's an operational philosophy. Okay. So a goal of lean is to eliminate waste, but overall it's looking at operations holistically. And we're going to learn more about that through the course of this course. Okay. Visual management, standardization, level scheduling, foundations of lean. Okay. That's true. All right. Control plan aids the project to sustain results. That's true. Okay. And we're going to get into what does a control plan look like? How formal does it need to be? It doesn't. You can summarize a control plan within that A3 report. It's assigning accountability, following up, next steps, ownership. So we're going to dive deeper into that. A goal of lean is to utilize knowledge of the process rather than intuition. That's true. Data driven, right? Well, I think. Perfect. I'm glad. Let's go see. I'm as when you talk with your frontline team members, having that frontline involvement, they're closest to the process. They probably have the best knowledge to leverage. And then when it comes to control and sustaining, because we've had that frontline team involvement, success to control and sustain will likely be a greater percentage, because we've involved that front line as we're rolling it out, we're making changes, we're communicating with our teams that do the work. Countermeasures that affect the process are better than countermeasures that affect the user. That's true, right? In absence of a standard, how do we expect our team member, our user, to operate the process well? So we'll dive deeper into that. So which is correct tool order application? Good variation. We'll dive deeper into this. Again, tools are just a great way of applying the knowledge. I'm not gonna reveal the answer to this one. This one will come back. We're gonna see this variation shrink up on the back end after we're
He's
done
not
here.
sure. He's not sure what the answer is.
I got my cheat sheet on the other screen. I don't need to tell you. All right. So expectations from the course, this is really right. This is a good point of conversation. You see, from Michael and I's perspective, we want to transfer knowledge. That's what we're here for. If the knowledge stays with me, it dies with me, and that's a waste, right? I want to be a sponge, and I want to wring out my knowledge so I don't get sour, because if a sponge that's not wrung out gets sour over time, right? So no expectations, no problem. Hey, come and learn and actively participate with us. Learn more about Six Sigma, lean methodologies. That's a large part of us. 20 of us here want to learn more about that. Learn more about problem solving. Perfect. Help customers. That's a big value, a big cup filler for me, is to help customers and clients, and really help Eversight improve. Perfect. Coming with an open mind, no preconceived notions, what you'll learn. I love that, and I appreciate that. That's going to be perfect. So, and any other thoughts or concerns? Because again, we want to encourage using the chat, raising your hand, using that reaction. You guys are our brakes, guys and gals. You guys are our brakes. Slow us down if we get going fast. It's a 3-hour session over the course of 5 days. We'll probably take one planned break, but if there needs to be more than that, just speak up. Hey, I need 5 minutes. Who else does, right? No concerns, limited knowledge, but that's okay. Cool that you've participated in a value stream mapping session. That is a topic we're going to dive deeper into. And perfect. Learning and applying, that's what is valuable, right? Because it's not just learning. If you don't use it, you may lose it. So we're going to give you that context, and our sessions are chock full of examples. So it's not just throwing knowledge and it looks clunky to apply. We want to make it approachable, so that way when you come away with it, hey, it makes sense on how to do something, use something. Yeah, no. How was that survey good for everybody?
Gentle nods.
Perfect.
Kind of. Great.
Thumbs up. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you use those reactions. I'm going to steal the screen back from you, David, and we're going to jump into our first topic, which is all about the lean fundamentals. So we'll talk a little bit about, kind of the history of it. We'll talk a lot about the facets of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to build this thing that they call the house of lean. What are we doing when we're doing lean? So we want you to understand the origins, the history. It's good to know. You kind of have to know it. So if someone, oh, did you know that lean was Japanese or came from Japan? You said, I never learned that. You'd feel like you were a little slighted and maybe we didn't know what we were doing. So we'll give you a little history of it, but what we really want to do is focus on a lot of these fundamental facets. We're talking about visual management, something called 5S, standardization, A3s, a lot of things that we have already talked about in the survey. So let's go ahead and get started. I made this little graphic. I think it's just a nice bullet points of saying, this is what lean is all about. It's about being more efficient. It's about removing waste, like what we talked about in that survey. It's also about making sure we understand how we add value. So in many of your processes, you know what steps you do from point A to point B to point C, but do you know how you're conferring value through each of those processes? What does the customer actually want at the end of the process, and how are each steps fulfilling that need of the customer towards their end? So that's what we're really into. What we talk a lot about is tools. You're going to see tools. We're going to nerd out on tools because they're fun. They're easy to apply. But what we're really doing is we're building business principles and concepts. So a lot of these things is not go and grab a 5 why analysis. It's you need to have discipline. You need to be thinking in such a manner, which kind of leads into the third bullet point. It's an operational philosophy. you can't go and do a lean project, right? Like you have to live lean. You have to do things in a lean manner day in, day out. That's the only way you're going to sustain these improvements. Otherwise, you're going to run into these cultural dissonances, right? Where you're trying to do something that doesn't make sense to a lot of people because they're doing something in a different way. So you really have to live into these principles day in and day out. But as we'll show you, we're going to get a lot out of it. Just an example of it, we're reducing time. A lot of times when we get in Six Sigma, we'll talk about reducing variation. I know one of the projects someone talked about regarding we want to guarantee delivery dates. That's more of a reducing variation problem, right? Because we're not sure, is it plus or minus 5 days? Is it plus or minus 5 hours? Whatever that time is for that organ distribution. So as we jump back over to the bullets here, the two big ideas from this: define value, define what the customer is willing to pay for. That's what we say when we say value, and remove everything that does not confer that value throughout the process. Focus on delivering value to the customer. That's the big thing. What we talk about is lean. So we have Mr. Dwight Schrute over here. It's many small improvements. What we don't want to do is say that that's not a big enough improvement. I don't want to focus my attention on it. No. What we want to do is take a total look at our entire process and remove every instance of waste from it. And by doing that, the total sum of all of those improvements is actually going to have quite a big impact from us. So there's no opportunity that is too small, right? We want to find anything. And I'll show you some very minute things throughout this course that you'll say, wow, like really they focus on that stuff. But overall, it adds up and it makes a huge difference. And as we talked just a little bit about in that past slide, it's a cultural shift, right? We don't want to just give you an A3 tool or a root cause analysis tool. We want you to live into this daily. And when you encounter a problem, be aware that this is a problem and that there are remedies to solve it. Don't try to live with problems, but create a system where you can identify and elevate the problems so that they can be solved and waste removed. The origin of lean, this is where we do our little history lesson. Some people will have a lot of slides, but we like to just give you a couple. It started in Toyota. So Toyota in the 1950s, coming out of World War II, Japanese company, a bunch of consultants came over and they needed to improve, essentially redo their entire industrial base for their entire country. So there's this guy, Taiichi Ohno. His name will not be on the quiz, but he essentially invented this thing called the Toyota production system. And what it did is it was kind of this bottom-up transformation where the people on the front lines, the people who are encountering the issues day in and day out, they're the ones that are identifying issues, identifying ways to solve it, and then elevating these issues up the chain of command. It obviously led to success. And what Toyota now has is they actually have their own consulting company that they go around and teach their competitors how to do this stuff. They're so far ahead because they've lived into this culture and their culture is 40 years advanced. They can afford to go and teach Ford how to do this and teach GM how to do this. And of course, all manufacturers are using principles of this now. But what has happened, what's very exciting for me and David, is that it's moved out of manufacturing. I'd say in the past 20, maybe 25 years, it's really blown up. And it's David and I do a lot of stuff in human resources now. David has worked in healthcare in the past. These what we'll find is that these principles are widely applicable across many, many industries. So 3 bullet points, right? Comes from Japanese manufacturing. You are going to hear, if you search lean, if you search Toyota production system, you will be inundated with a bunch of Japanese terms that we are going to avoid, because what we want you to do is feel comfortable and confident in applying these terms and not learning Japanese. But what we'll see is that it's very, very applicable to everything. So why we like lean, why David and I like when we talk to people, focus more on lean than the actual Six Sigma stuff, though Six Sigma sounds a lot cooler, is it's not industry specific. It takes very little material investment, right? We're not saying, oh, we can make this improvement and all we need is $100,000 for a new system. We don't have to rely on those capital investments, which also makes it great when you're facing a lot of budgetary pressures or economic pressures. You can actually rely on lean a lot more because you can get a lot of efficiencies out of it without a lot of capital. We also like it because it puts people in the center of change. What we're not doing is we're not dictating things from the top down. We're letting people empower the decisions that we make and identify ways to improve. As we also said, I think we've noticed a little bit of it already probably, is that it's a process mindset. You've probably caught David and I talking a little bit about process already and visualizing the process and understanding what the customer wants at the end of the process. That is, you're going to have to get used to that. That's kind of the whole deal of lean, is that we have to understand everything we do in business is a process. You can't explain what you're doing as a process. You don't know what you're doing. But what you'll find is that you don't have to be a rocket scientist. David and I certainly isn't. Well, he always says speak for yourself, but yeah, we're not all that smart. But what we do is we rely on the paradigms that we've learned, and we're very effective in it. Now,
Michael, if you want to just pause there for a second,
sure.
How's this making sense so far? Any questions? And just let's just have a pause for a second. Give anybody that has a reaction or feedback.
I think a lot of us are familiar with the Toyota production of the lean mindset. We actually took another concept from them, which is the Kanban board. And we've applied that in our organization, specifically in the donation support center. And then I believe maybe even in donor eligibility, but we have Kanban boards actually in our computer system that we use every day.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Japanese word, Kanban. What does it mean?
I don't remember. Why are you guys giving me all these quizzes? It's Monday.
It doesn't matter, right? That's the point, is it doesn't matter. Anyone else? Yeah, Tammy?
I was just going to say, it means it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Exactly
Great.
right. It resonates, right?
Yeah.
Process mindset, if you're not necessarily tracking with that, right? But, think about your kitchen, right? I love to cook, and, having things at point of use. So, if you're going to do some meal prep work, where do you keep your knives, cutting boards? Where's your dishwasher in relationship to storage in your kitchen, right? How many footsteps do you need to take as you're unloading dishwasher to go to your utensil drawer, to food storage containers, to plates and dishes, things like that. So, the concept of unloading a dishwasher, you can think about it like a process. Hey, open the door, pull out the trays, and then start walking through. Do you like to unload the top tray, or do you like to do utensils first? I'm not trying to poke fun at it, but I am, because that's sadly how I think. I can't help it. It's that engineer minding of it, but it's how to be efficient about it. And do you consider to lay out or lay out drawers or storage areas in your kitchen to just to make it easy on yourself at home? So, process thinking at home, carry that over into the workplace. When you do your work, how many applications do you need to have open on your desktop to do the work that you're doing? Do you juggle between multiple, or do you get to work mostly within one? That's just another way of, maybe you didn't think about multiple applications bouncing back and forth as a opportunity. It can be, right? So anybody else? Okay.
Great. I'm going to forge ahead here, David. One of the things as we've talked about with lean is that it is a culture, right? We can't go and do lean without building a culture behind it. So what we have here, we've called this the house of lean. And just like a house, it starts with a foundation. It's very abstract, right? I did not hire an architect to design this. I did it in PowerPoint. So what we'd start with is a strong foundation, and then we have support. But ultimately, what we're aiming towards is delivering this customer value. And what lives in the house is this culture of respect for people and continuous improvement. But what this also means is that we can't have the, and I don't think anybody, raise your hand if you don't like respect for people as a tenant. Just David. Okay, so what we have here is that we actually can't achieve respect for people. We can't have this continual improvement until we lay a good foundation. And what these tools are saying is the tools help us achieve, the tools are not the end, right? The tools are not why we're doing this, but they help us, they enable us to respect people and to enable them to do their jobs effectively. So we have over here the bullets, right? Respect every individual, lead with humility, seek perfection, embrace scientific thinking. You can call this data-driven thinking. Focus on process is a huge thing we've talked about. We want to assure quality at the source. We don't want to get to the end of the process and then assess quality and find out that it's bad, because we've conferred all this value. We've done all this processing that costs money. And now at the very end, we find out it's incorrect. We want to assure quality at the source. We want to improve flow and pull through the process. We'll get into all these things, of course. Thinking systemically between different systems, how an improvement in one or a defect in one can affect another. Create constancy of purpose, and the big one, creating value for the customer. So if there's one thing you learned today, eliminate waste, deliver value for the customer, and understand what that value is. And David's really passionate about kind of that voice of the customer is what we call it. So this is the house of lean. The goal is to deliver customer value. We're going to do it by respecting people. We've got the tools, right? Supported by the tools. But what we have to start with, and that's what we're going to do in the fundamental section here, is we have to focus on doing what's required to build the building, right? You wouldn't build a skyscraper as nice as they are to look at without first building a strong foundation. So what we also want to talk about regarding the lean culture is that the front line is key. We might have already mentioned this a little bit, but when they started this in the 1950s, they really focused on having the people who are doing the work as the experts. They're the ones that encounter the issues. They're the people who probably know why the issues were created in the first place. And they're also probably the ones that already have an idea on how to improve it and make it better. So what we don't want to do is when we're, doing this type of stuff is we don't want to sit in a leather padded chair and say, I've got an idea on how to improve. What we really want to do is go out and engage the people and say, well, how did this defect impact you in your process? What workarounds did you have to do? Because that helps us understand the opportunity for improvement, but it also probably helps us understand what our process actually is and how we can confer value from point A to point Z. We also call this thing Gemba walks. As we mentioned, there is some Japanese in here, but essentially it's the Japanese word saying where the work is done. So again, what we want to do, David mentioned earlier, we don't want to manage by intuition. We don't want to say, I think this is what's happening. Instead, we want to just go and see. That's what we call it. Go and see, find out what's actually happening. And if it meets your intuition, that's great. Probably won't, is my guess. There'll probably be some caveats that you did not expect. So what we want to do is go and see and have that scientifically driven decision-making to help us improve. So all of these things are just kind of cultural dynamics that you can't really do lean without, right? You can't have kind of a top-down structure without engaging the line workers and still be lean.
Go back a slide there just for a second. Sit on that.
Yes, sir.
So, another way of looking at Gemba walks, you can call that a process walk, call that a waste walk. Some folks think about, well, I don't have data. That's okay. Talk to a coworker, talk to the front line, interview. It can be part of data collection. And I'm kind of foreshadowing, right? We will be talking more about data collection and the methods on how to, what does that look like? But, in absence of maybe you think of data as numerical, but in absence of data, it's okay to collect it. And chart that out for yourself, so that way when you begin stepping into solutioning, that you truly are solving for the right problem, if I'm making sense. Go ahead.
Well, thanks. And then the last slide we have on culture is what we want to do with our teams. We also, because we're so focused on removing intuition from what we're doing in our thinking and our decision making, we're not going to be able to remove all of that unless we engage people from different perspectives, right? So if it's just all of my people in my department and we're going to approach this particular problem, we're going to have the nomenclature of 2022. We're going to have a particular bias towards a solution, towards seeing the problem in some particular way. But by engaging a cross-functional team, which has multiple levels of hierarchy, multiple functional areas, people who are participating across the process, not just in one particular area, we're going to eliminate that bias. We're going to have greater representation of different ideas, which is actually going to get us into what the real solution is. So it allows us to achieve diverse perspectives and understand how different actions can affect different people. And hopefully you appreciate my my little memes along the way. So good. That's what we're talking about in terms of culture. I want to now shift to our house of lean. And what we want to do is focus on this first part of the foundation. So again, our goal, always have our goal in mind. We're not doing this for no reason. We're doing this to achieve and deliver customer value, but we have to start with visual management. So what we're going to do is figure out why we have to start with visual management, what visual management is, why I think it's cool and really fun to play around with. But you'll see that how visual management really impacts respect for people and enables us to have stability across our entire organization. So what visual management is it's all about setting an architecture of control points that help us make decisions quickly. They help us orient ourselves to our surroundings to make those impulsive decisions. It helps us differentiate between what's important and what's not. And we already do this in our daily lives. So I play electric guitar. What I've done on all of my cords, it's very subtle, is I've wrapped red electrical tape around all of them. So now at the end of a show or whatnot, there's all these cords thrown about and I know exactly what's mine, right? It doesn't take very much. It's not rocket science, but it's easier. And then if someone says, hey, that's my cord and that cord costs $50, I say, no, it's not, because I've got the red tape on there to prove it. You've probably done this if you ever highlighted a book, right? Why did you highlight? Well, you were using visual management. You were using a visual cue to create an architecture of control points that alerted you to what was important versus what was not in your surroundings, right? Is that what everyone was thinking when they were highlighting in their book? Yeah, that's what you were doing. And my guess is if you live with a spouse or a significant other, you have a different color toothbrush. And the reason for that is because early in the morning, you don't want to think about whose toothbrush was where last night. And, you know, it's just a very simple thing, right? Like this is not rocket science. You already do it. But how important is that just to have you, you know, and also to help reduce defects, right? How many people have actually grabbed their spouses or significant others wrong toothbrush? Probably like nobody, or like maybe once. The risk of it is very bad. The severity of it's high, and just a simple color change makes that so much less likely. That's visual management. That's why it's important. That's why it helps respect for people. And that's why it enables everything else we do. It's not just about the architecture. It's also about what I call creating a winnable game. So visual management is also important in understanding projects, what we're doing in projects, what we're doing in our processes and our departments. What does this mean to win? If I've got a project or I've got a department, I probably have goals. I probably have to do something. Someone had the great goal, I keep drawing to it, of you know, reducing or being able to guarantee that shipment date for a particular organ, particular tissue. So that's a great goal because people know whether or not they're winning and losing by how many times they were able to guarantee that shipment rate, that shipment time, whether or not they guaranteed it and they actually were able to deliver it in that time. I think of it as like a football game, like if you look at a scoreboard at a stadium, you've got all these different metrics. We call them key performance indicators in business. And it's essentially what's important. What am I keeping track of that's important to let me know whether or not I'm able to win this game, whether or not I'm able to achieve what it is I set out to achieve. And that's what a scoreboard is it's essentially a dashboard. You don't need graphs, you don't need bar charts. What you need is understanding what it means to win, how you're tracking, whether or not you're winning or losing, and all the other indicators that you need to make the decisions to figure out whether you win or lose. So if you're losing, if you're the visitors, let's say, and you need to score 10 more points, it's not enough just to know that you need to score 10 more points, right? You need to know the circumstances. You need to know how much time is left, where you're at, where you're going, what you need to achieve now to achieve what you need later. That's visual management as well. People have been talking a lot about the digital migration, moving all these paper documents into the virtual space. David and I have done this a lot in what we do in Microsoft Teams. So we've created these standards, we've created all these structures within Microsoft Teams that help us manage our workload as well. So here we've got different audit folders and whatnot, and we've even created workflows within Microsoft Teams environment to show us where we're at, what we need to do, and by when, right? So here things have been completed. There are different phases of a project plan that we can talk about a little bit later, but then we can see here, oh, there's a deadline, right? I've got to get this done by the 2nd of February. So all of these things are just different aspects of visual management that we want to talk about. So one of the best ways, David, I'll pause here because we're kind of right at a good stopping point. Do you have any thoughts on where we're at?
Yeah. How are we as far as, does anybody need a break? Show of hands. Are we good to press on?
Annalie gave us a thumbs up.
Good to press on. I like that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tammy.
So, in review of that, yeah, it's what makes sense, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about checklists and the value for them, right? But it's, whether it's an A3 report, whether it's, something like Microsoft Teams. Thank you, Kate. MS Planner, some neat features, right? Microsoft Teams. If who, what, by when, as far as like implementation plans and kind of scheduling and expectations, setting the stage for visual management, having the improvement goal with some of these projects that were highlighted during the intro time. I hope you're seeing some of those parallels. Not everyone understands their business, what's valuable to the customer, and that can kind of be scary, right? When we meet with some clients and we ask some of those questions on what's key, what's valuable to your customer client, and it falls on crickets. I think it's healthy to see that this team has already identified the value, transportation time, shipping time. We want to be able to guarantee that is healthy, and I'm glad that you're already having those insights. So I think it's setting a good stage, right?
Thanks, David. So this next thing, we call it 5S. You can hear it as the 5S system. It's a really cool way to use visual management to improve a process, particularly to improve workplace organization. So what we'll do is we'll show you what 5S is. We've got some games to play to make you feel the impact of 5S. And we've even got some videos as well. So what we'll do is we'll introduce what it is, we'll discuss the principles, and then we can talk about the benefits as well. So 5S, as I said, it's a way to organize the workplace. And what it is not just organizing the workplace, but it's creating a visual workplace where where you've got all of these visual cues, all of these visual control points that make you more efficient, that make you leaner. And as I mentioned, it's small improvements, right? No opportunity is too small for us. So what you'll see is all these things, you'll be like, man, like that's not that big of an improvement, but taken collectively, taken together, you'll see that it really pays dividends. So it's foundational of lean. This is, if anyone starts a lean journey, this is probably one of the first things that people talk about. What it stands for is 5 Japanese terms that we're not going to talk about because we don't speak Japanese. So what it stands for in the American English language is sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And we work in that fashion, right? It's one before the other. So in the sort phase, what we do is we look at an environment, we look at a workspace, we say all of these tools that we have, all of these parts and supplies, everything in our area, we figure out what needs to be there and what needs to be removed. And then of course we remove it. Next, what we do is we set an order. So a quick little aphorism that we say for set an order is a place for everything and everything in its place. So we don't want to just have all of the things in a particular work environment. I'll use David's example of the kitchen, right? He probably has a knife set, a steak knife set, but he probably also has a place for each one of those steak knives. They're not just on the counter. They're not just in the drawers where you can get cut. But if I went to some of his drawers, they probably don't have a nice, neat location. In a work setting, which also means that he has to go and rummage around and figure out where his ladle is and figure out where his cheese grater is, whatever. So in a work setting, we would actually call that a waste because he's looking for things. And what we need to do is streamline that. And if we can make it nice and ordered where he knows exactly where it is, he doesn't have to think about it. He can visualize it because he's got visual standards in place. He'll save time every time he goes to look for that tool. It's really important when you think about the virtual environment. We'll give you some virtual examples later on, but where is that file? We talked about the standardization nomenclature, right? With the CRMs. What was that thing named in this particular system? Setting it in order is that step to say, well, we have to have a standardized approach for it. Shining is also keeping the area clean. So it's important not just to have things in their place, but also to keep the location clean, so it's free of debris and all that good stuff. Particularly like in an operating room in a clinical environment, you would always want that to be shined. You would never want to go into a non-cleaned operating room. We'll give you some examples of that later on as well. The standardized step we talked about a little bit with like the nomenclatures. You want to standardize everything. So it's not just I have all the tools in the right order, but it's I know how I'm using the tools correctly. You've got a standard for how to chop vegetables. You've got a standard for how to cut through meat, all of these things. By creating a standard, what you're doing is you're assessing what's the quickest, the fastest, the most effective way to do whatever that task is. And then you're creating the workspace that allows you to achieve it in such a manner. And then 5S ends with sustain. It's a habit. It's continually applied. It doesn't make sense to clean your room and then immediately trash it, right? You've got to keep your room clean. And that's the whole point of 5S. So what we want to do now is play a fun game. I think this game is a blast. So David is going to throw something in the chat. It's a link to this fun game. I'm also going to pull it up and play along with you. So I'll give you all a second just to navigate over there. But what this is, we call it the 5S drawer game. And we're going to take the principles that we just briefly talked about. We're going to apply them in the game. So nobody hit start yet because we all have to do this together. So what we're going to do is we'll have a board. It's going to have a workstation. And we have to click on each card in sequence from 1 to 50. We'll have 30 seconds to do it. And it's impossible to accomplish in the first task. Don't worry about that. But what we'll see is that by applying principles of 5S, subsequently, we can improve our performance. So let's go ahead and on 3, we'll hit start. And again, we're looking at cards from 1 to 50. 1, 2, 3. So I'm starting And I'll narrate mine because I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 10. Did anybody beat me? Nobody got better than 10?
I could not find the number 3 for the life of me.
How far did y'all get?
3.
3. I couldn't find number 3.
I'm right there with you.
I got to 4.
Wow.
Archer got to 8.
Can we try this again? Because I had to like grasp what we were doing.
No, that's the whole game.
That's round 1.
Yeah, it's round 1.
round
we're gonna do
it's
this
gonna get better.
Okay, the challenge is on now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So David and I have done this a couple times too, so we kind of know this shtick. But now you probably have a continue button here. If we all go and click the continue button, we'll see that things have changed. We're gonna sort through the drawer and we're gonna remove all of the numbers that didn't need to be there. So if we're only counting from 1 to 50, let's remove 51 and 52 and 53 and 54, make our drawer a little bit neater. So I'm gonna go ahead and click it. And what do you know? All right, I got 12. Anybody beat me yet?
Yes, I got 13. Oh, we got a third. I got 13. We have a 14 from
Good
Alex.
for you. Good job, Alex.
14 from Nick.
14.
And we have some variation around there. So again, we're playing a game, but we're organizing our virtual workstation, if you will. So 5S, making some sense? Is it clicking? Cool.
Awesome. So continuing on, the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to set an order, right? So we sorted it, we removed all the stuff that didn't need to be there, set an order. It's now going to be ordered in such a way where if you look from left to right, 1 is going to be the upper left quadrant, we'll call it. 2 is going to be in the middle, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, kind of like a phone pad, I guess. And then 10 will be back where number 1 was. So there's going to be some structure, there's going to be some order to it. That's the second step of set an order. So let's go ahead and try this. They rearrange it and look, they oriented it as well. I forgot that they did that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I doubled it. 24. I know people beat me. I do worse. Yeah, 35. Do worse as this game goes on. 26. Yeah, so everyone beat me is what I'm seeing. Did anyone not beat me? 13. Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Appreciate the honesty.
All right. We got some. Great. So very good. As you can see, we're going through the 5S structure here. We're sorting things out. We're setting them in order. The next one is really nice, right? We're standardizing it. So what we're going to do is almost like a ratchet set or something in a toolbox, right? Where now everything is just going to be sequential and they're all going to be the same size and it's really easy. And everyone should be able to get this. So if we go ahead and hit continue, very, very easy. I actually struggle to do this sometimes. Oh man. Oh, I got 49. I didn't do it. That's a shame. Yeah, I think most people get 50 by this time. I've got a bad mouse. So yeah. That's what I blame it on. So as we can see here, we can look at what we've done in each of the 4 steps, right? Is we used to have 10, then we sorted it. Now we've got 12. We've doubled it again to 24, and now with standardized, we've doubled it yet again. So again, just the visual workplace things, we can really start to improve. That is kind of the fun of it. That's the fun game that we play. But you can also like just reflect on yourself and be like, well, look at my workstation around me. Am I using 5S? Is there a place for everything and everything in its place? I have no less than 50 pens in front of me. It's not 5S, right? I got to sort those out. How many of them even work? Probably half of them. So just little things like that. We have to live this stuff daily, and these opportunities arise all over the place. The more we can do it, the more efficient we'll be, the more time we'll have to do the things that really matter. That's important to us and important to our customer. So just to review this stuff, we start by removing the unnecessary, keeping only what is used. And we'll talk about this red tag event in just a second. I think we'll take a break before that. Then we do the set in order and we shine. So a place for everything and everything in its place. We have fixed locations. We started with just that grid and then we moved it to a nice sequence. That was part of the shine as well, is when we just kind of shined it and made everything the same size, oriented it correctly, and creating that standardized part of it. And again, none of it matters. Doesn't matter if we clean our room once if we don't keep it clean. That's the whole thing of 5S.
So think about that sustain, right? Workplace, home. I'm going to use this word audit a little bit. So, when you take the time to do and apply 5S, what's that frequency? Is it once a week? Okay, too much. Once every 2 weeks, once a month, just to review those standards that you choose to put into place and then help yourself, your team sustain it. Maybe it becomes a part of a monthly huddle, or at home, maybe that's the weekly chore when you take the time to lay it out. But it's that auditing, it's that walking the workplace to make sure and critique and criticize, but ultimately it's that sustain piece.
Great, thanks, David. 2 more slides. We'll take a break. One of them's a video, so don't worry about that. An eye chart here, but really 5S key benefits. It increases productivity because we're not looking for things. We're not moving around. Everything is what David called at point of use. They're right there and we know where they're at. It improves safety because we have an organized work environment. We're not tripping over unexpected things. We don't have slips and falls. We're not cutting ourselves, scrounging for knives in the drawers. What's also really important too is that it allows you to identify when things have changed. If you're living in like filth, utter filth, it's very difficult to figure out what's new. But if you've got a very clean, call it a workspace, and all of a sudden there's oil at the bottom of your machine, or maybe you're at your desk and all of a sudden there's a coffee spill. Okay, well now that's changed, right? The status quo has changed and it's very easy to see. So you're applying visual management even as things change. Okay, I did have a clean desk. Now it's covered in crumbs because I ate that granola bar. Now it's up to me to return it to standard. But it's with having a clean desk, particularly that shine step, it's really helpful to improve safety, removing those slips and falls, particularly in like a manufacturing setting. Reduction of waste, as we talked about, goes hand in hand with productivity. But we're also, removing lost and damaged items. Think if I actually paid for all of these pens and not just scrounged them about, that's capital that's tied up in all of these pens. And if you have if you have all this inventory stuck that you're not actually using because you don't have a clean environment to know whether or not you should be using it, the reduction of waste is entailed with that And then finally, you can achieve a lot of worker commitment. When we talked, I know someone talked about being a better leader through lean, and hopefully you've seen visual management is a great way to do that. But it builds worker commitment because it puts the person at the center of what you're doing, because it's their workspace. They get ownership of it. They get to decide where things are. They get to participate in all of the steps. Obviously, we haven't talked about it, but hopefully you've understood that this isn't, the vice president isn't going to tell you where you put things in your work environment. This is a total ownership of the person who's actually doing the task. So those were the kind of high level benefits of 5S. David, do you have a video for us if we move over to the next one? Don't share your screen yet, but just
I'm ready
right.
when you are.
So my favorite person who does 5S is this very small Japanese woman named Marie Kondo.
And she might even spark joy.
Yeah, she may even spark joy. Thank you, David. And as you might expect, you know, we talk about lean as being so cultural. The Japanese culture itself is very lean, and she has revolutionized the home organization market and whatnot in the past, I don't know, 5-7 years. I think she's written a book. I think she's got a Netflix series, and it's all about the joy of tidying up. And she's made far more money at this than I have. But David, I want you to play that little video for us now, and you can just, you know, she'll bring a smile to your face because she's awesome, but also just see what concepts of 5S you see her applying.
Hi, I'm Marie Kondo. I'm so excited to introduce my tidying course. For the first time ever, I will be personally guiding you through my famous tidying method. I will teach you everything you need to know, from folding techniques and storage solution to discovering what sparks joy for you. Get ready to experience the life-changing magic of tidying now. Do this together.
So she's awesome. What'd you all see in the video?
So I've watched her Netflix series. I'm going to say I'm a fan. I saw every single one of them, to be honest with you. And again, I think maybe it's just because I'm exposed to her style from the Netflix series. Have I implemented everything in my home? No. There's some things I just can't get rid of, books being one of them. However, I'm a big fan of her, and it looks nice. Makes me feel good when I watch her. So
awesome. Annalie, reduce items. Everything has a place compartment. Yeah, very good. All that is left has to spark joy. Yeah, and absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, it's hard to reduce things that, you know, you're associated with. Trust me, Dawn, I'm a lover of books as well. It is hard. Like, well, okay, I read that book 5 times. Is it time to share it with a friend? Well, sure, share it, but I want it back, right? I'm not ready to let go of it. But where you can, you know, reduce or eliminate, it's only going to help you have maybe a little bit more space. It's going to make it easier to find something. I say my garage used to be organized. Stuff. I had some stuff happen. So anyway, we'll get into that later. But, you know, being organized, whether it's at home or at work, you know, I really resonates with Marie Kondo. It's just funny. You wouldn't think a guy, but I mean, it is something to be organized. That I open a drawer, I can go to a space. I find peace when I find exactly what I'm looking for. My poor children, you know, when they do dishwasher duty and I find something in a drawer that doesn't belong, come here. Where does this belong? Show me. Why'd you put it there? Mm-hmm. You know, I get on them, but it's in a fun way. I don't give them too hard of a time.
Right.
What else did we see with Marie Kondo? Cool.
Shine sticks out in my head just because I'm literally thinking of Shining, and it just looked very clean and tidy and easy to identify where things were at.
Right on.
Absolutely.
I'm with Dawn in the same boat. I've watched her series, and it's funny, when we started this presentation, I was going to say it reminds me of Marie Kondo, but it's interesting because you have to make a big mess first to sort
Yep.
everything out. And
Yeah.
that's a hard concept, honestly. But it's so interesting to see it visually too in her video, to see that big mess and then start sorting it out, and then the outcome of how clean and shiny and organized it is.
All those clothes on the bed, right? And then she has to go through them one by one, ask the question. We don't spark joy here. I'll be the first one to say, David and I do not spark joy, but yeah, that's a great point.
It's very
No.
satisfying to see it at the end.
Tammy, I love where you're at. You have to make a mess. So after the break, circle back. We talked about red tagging. So instead of making a big mess, let's make a smaller one and step into it. So because a mess, right? Overwhelming, vapor lock. Oh, I get frustrated, and it's hard to see on the success on the other side of the mess. So there's a way to make it approachable. Okay.
Cool. So let's go ahead and take a break. I've got 10:34 right now on my clock, Eastern time. If we come back at 10:45, let's call it a 10-minute break. And we'll just start with some more fun examples of 5S. Sound good?
Great.
Awesome. We got 2 minutes, so if you're there, start thinking about turning on your camera. If you're not, we won't hold it against you. I'll make some banal observations while we wait back, whether or not you're hearing it or not. David, who's a Florida Gator, is wearing some Gator colors today, so that's something fun. This team didn't make a bowl game. That's all right.
Whoa. We were in a bowl game.
Oh, yeah?
It wasn't a pretty showing.
Which
but-
I didn't know. Which one?
Oh, yeah. It was memorable. I don't know.
Consolation Bowl? I don't.
Whiskey Bowl.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was a toilet bowl. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'll take it. I have no rebuttal.
That's great. Yeah, David and I go back and forth with our sports teams, with our allegiances. Colleen is a Spartan fan, so can feel bad for her.
I still like her though.
Thanks,
I,
Dawn.
Of course. Always.
So welcome back, everybody. We've got 1 more minute. No need to rush. No need to rush. Grab a cup of coffee.
Always make time for coffee.
David is also his background is chemical engineering, and he's applied that to coffee in a way that you wouldn't believe. So you can always message us if you have any questions about what we're talking about. But in particular, if you want to talk about coffee, if you want to talk about how to make a good cup, or which farm in South America he gets his beans from, feel free to shoot David an email, because he is at that level.
I make time for coffee always.
Very good. So good. We've got 10:45 people coming back, sharing your camera, not sharing your camera. We're just coming back. We've wrapped up a portion of 5S. We're going to continue talking about 5S through most of the morning here. It's important to remember where we're at in that house of lean. What we're doing is we're building towards delivering customer value. And what we have to start with is a very strong foundation of visual management and standards. So that's what we're doing. That's why we're talking about 5S. We just saw one of my favorite videos of this workshop, which is Marie Kondo, and how she has branded essentially 5S, which I would say is more or less a Japanese cultural phenomenon. And she's applied it to home organization. One of the things, if you've watched it, like a couple of our participants have, what she'll tell you is that every article of clothing that you have, you need to be able to see it, right? It's visual management. She's not branding it as that, but that's what she's doing. It has to spark joy, and you have to be able to see it. You can see here, I'm not sharing my screen yet. We're back now. You can see in some of she had like this box. She has a place for everything. Everything is in its place. She has standard locations for them. She can see everything. It's nice and tidy. There's nothing there that shouldn't be there. So all of these things are essentially principles of 5S that she's applying to home organization. What I'd like to do is show you some examples of 5S in my work life. Here's one. I took this like 12 years ago when I was working at Kroger as not a engineer and not a lean person, but simply as somebody who stocked shelves. And Kroger was actually very, very lean. And here you can see they had 5S, right? This is a regulatory 5S where you have to say, hey, you have to denote where the fire exits are. In this case, it says fire exit, do not block. So they've got the standard in place, right? There's visual management there. What they don't have is the sustain. What they have is cases and cases of Coors Light blocking the fire exit. Obviously, we had too much inventory that we can get into in a different slide deck here, but essentially they're trying to apply 5S. They have not shined, they have not sustained, and therefore you really have some safety risks here, right? You can't actually get out of the fire exit. Ideally, you could drink the Coors Light as you burn to death. Maybe you try to fight the fire with the Coors Light. I'm not really sure. There's not a whole lot of options other than trying to unstack these boxes and try to get out the fire exit. So just 5S done poorly, done incorrectly. Here's another 5S example from kind of more of an industrial setting. This is maybe like a maintenance room in the back. You can see what it looked like before, just boxes everywhere, pallets everywhere. Looks like my house after I get an Amazon delivery, just all kinds of tooling. And then afterwards, you can see it looks much better, right? You can still get things. You know where things are. There's maybe a place for everything in its place, but there's always an opportunity to be improving, right? So we can see here that even though they've done a lot with 5S, they're not getting it all right, right? This table is placed, whatever this is, it's in some taped space. We'll talk about floor markings in just a second, but you see that that table is obviously not supposed to be there. So something, they didn't quite sustain it. There's a cart blocking this cabinet, so you really can't get to the cabinet, which means that there's really not a place for everything and everything in its place. There's no floor markings on a lot of these carts to denote that they belong there. And this broom is not in a standardized location. So we can say that, yeah, they were really successful in probably the sort of the 5S, the first stage of 5S. They were really successful in that shine phase, but that set in order doesn't seem quite right. That sustain standardized doesn't seem quite right. So you can see just kind of levels of 5S, levels of performance and excellence, and you can actually denote where they still struggle. And it's actually very helpful to understand your culture and where you're struggling by using the visual management tools that you have available to you. Another 5S example, a good one actually, is what it looked like before. Again, a maintenance desk of some sort. You can see that it's much cleaner. Everyone gets the clean. It's very easy to clean. It's hard to sustain, but you can see how much nicer it looks after it's been cleaned. They've also done a really good job. One of my favorite things about 5S, one of my favorite tools, you wouldn't think of it as a tool, but are labels. So rather than, if you think about the time wasted of rummaging through all of these drawers, finding that tool, they've now labeled all of them. So they actually know where exactly to go to get that particular thing. Again, could you do that in your kitchen? Probably. You might look weird having labels on your kitchen, but it is a level of workplace organization that improves performance. If we had a drawer that said wooden spoons, or we had a drawer that said, steak knives, whatever, cutlery, for someone who's not familiar with that work environment, it would help them as well. It would help with training if somebody was entering the kitchen for the first time and you had to train them on where everything was. It would certainly help. So another example of 5S. And then David, maybe you've done, this is actually like your picture, I think. So if you could give a brief overview of this one.
Sure. So this was with a healthcare system in Southwest Florida. We had the Code Blue, the leader of the Code Blue Council approach the internal improvement group. I was assigned to this team to help them with their problem. Their problem was across 5 different campuses that they had Code Blue carts. Among the campuses, they had all sorts of levels of variation. Each campus was consistent, but when staff floated between campuses, they started, identifying, calling out that, using the carts, it was challenging. So there was variation affecting a high float staff population. So, and then they also, saw waste as far as expired medications and things like that. So we've really focused on the cart itself, and we had some ancillary improvements. But, to Tammy's point, we made a mess. We went through drawer by drawer and called out, is this the best location? We cataloged what is in this drawer. We went to those experts to respond to a code blue situation. Where is best for medications for these different supplies to be located? Is it top drawer, second, third, fourth, all the way down to the bottom? And we reorganized it. We came up with, we mapped the current state of the cart. We came up with a recommendation for what should the future state look like. We went to the proper stakeholders. We went on a road show and kind of demonstrated, hey, we want to pilot this. We want to trial, test it. And we did. We collected data. We validated that the future state cart was viable. And then we rolled that out. We came up with an implementation plan to go out across one hospital at a time and go live across the system. So this was a really good success, not only just for those using it, but then obviously patients receiving the need for use of it. And then, the levels, how much of par levels, right? Going back to a little bit of Kanban, how much of something do you need on the cart versus other responding groups, such as pharmacy responding to a code blue event. They bring a pharmacy bag with them. So not only supplies on the cart, then we looked at ancillary supplies coming along as well. So this was really a fun project and value added for the team. They were new to the concept of 5S, but through the project, through teaching and walking through it, it was really good.
Well, thanks, David. So yeah, we've talked a little bit. Yeah, it's manufacturing based, the history of lean, but here, David actually firsthand, in a lot of, he's got a lot of projects, but this is just one example firsthand of how we've applied something like 5S to a clinical setting in healthcare. So as we talked about making a mess, right? How do we get started with 5S? We don't just want to leave you with, hey, here's the 5S idea. Here's Marie Kondo. She's great. Go look at her masterclass on YouTube. What do you actually do to implement 5S in your area? We'll talk about it in a virtual setting later on, but for now, let's talk about it in a physical setting. One way that I really like is the sort. We start with a red tag audit, which is, of course, initiating it in the sort. So what you do is you get a bunch of red tags. You can buy them online. You can use, you can go use construction paper. You don't have to get this red tag, but essentially, what you do is you tag every item that you find that is somehow not compliant, somehow not belonging in that workstation. And then you go through, and again, it's another form of visual management. You pull all of those things out. You're making the decision right there to say, hey, I think this doesn't belong. I'm going to tag it. If I think it doesn't belong, we can always adjudicate it later on. And what this looks like, so I'll give you an example. Maybe you're at a dental location and you've got the dentist is not very organized. So there's all kinds of stuff in this dentist room, right? We can point to it and we can go through with red tags and we can start to look at all of the ways to improve it. So the first thing I'm just going to simulate a red tag event here. You would go with a cross-functional team, especially people who are not actually practicing in this location, because you want people from outside perspectives to criticize from a different perspective how exactly things ought to be. So you might say, well, are you doing x-rays all the time? Well, no, if not, then they don't need to be right here by the patient. So you've got two of those x-ray little brackets. I don't know what they do. I'm not into dental things. I've got too much work on my teeth. You'd think I know.
Oral bite wing type.
Oral bite
things.
wing. Thank
Yeah.
you, David. Jack of all trades. You can also go over here and look, okay, well, they've got this dental kit, right? Where they've got the mirror and they've got the things that tell you don't floss enough, and they've got all this stuff, but they've got two of them right there. Well, they only need one. It's kind of that Kanban that David was talking about. So we would tag one of those. We wouldn't tag both of them, but we'd say you've got too many of these, and you run the risk of, well, which one did I use? Did I use both of them? Are both of them already used? Hopefully not. So you'd go through, you'd continue tagging all these things. Well, you've got latex gloves lying around. You've got papers up here. As we tag everything else, we've got an extra little cart. We've got an extra stool. We've got prescription bottles all over the place. We even have maybe the dentist's water bottle that's just kind of sitting there next to the computer. I don't really know why it's there. We've got boxes, and in all these cases, you could probably make a case for why it needs to be there. Maybe not the trash, but it's getting back to 5S, right? Well, what's the standard? Is this really the most effective way to store patient records or some medical records is up on top of a cabinet? Are those outdated? Do they, or are you now in a virtual setting and all those things can be thrown away? So all of these things is how you would start with a red tag event. And then this is what it looks like in the future state, where now we've removed all of that trash, all of that stuff up there, just to show a before and an after, and how much better of a space does that look like. We're also getting into things like labels and pictures on labels that are more in the set of in order stage in that future state to say, wow, we've really improved and we've actually got a standard for where these things are located now. So that's kind of a red tag event. We do it a little differently when we're in classrooms, but does anybody have any questions of a red tag event?
Tammy, does that help to give a way of taking a mess and working through it in a methodical fashion? What are your thoughts, Tammy?
That works so much better for my OCD because putting everything in a big giant pile and making a bigger mess is just overwhelming. Here, you're just tagging the things that are out of place and then sorting each one. So yeah, makes a lot more sense.
Nice. Melissa.
When you're first starting your red tag process, is it better to be conservative with your tags or to sort of go overboard and then bring back things that you realized you needed and had to do it all over again?
So for me, I would let your team run wild with red tags, right? And go together as a small cross-functional team and give and do it as an event. You could do it individually, or just do it as an event, and you can have that conversation, walk through it. Hey, why did you red tag that? So it's almost like that live brainstorming activity with those red tags, walking through it, and you can then choose to pull those red tagged items onto a rolling cart, and you can choose to segregate. So my concept is go wild with the red tags, and then you can always peel it back and then come to congruence and then step into shining and standardizing it. But again, go approach it with the team perspective. That's just what has worked for me and with teams, but it may not, your mileage may vary, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think you could change these red tags too. This isn't hard. It doesn't have to have all this category. You just write reason on here, and the person who wrote the red tag, hey, this is why I did it. And as you go back in a small group and figure out whether or not it, I had a question about this, and I thought here's the reason I tagged it. You can adjudicate that later on. It's always better to tag it. Later on, you get to the standardized phase where you're actually going to make the standards of how many of X is going to be in my workspace. Does Y belong in my workspace? What do I, what work method do I have for this tool? So you can figure that out later on. I wouldn't worry too much about overthinking it. just have them, it's kind of like brainstorming, right? You can't evaluate at the same time as you brainstorm, right? You just have to be creative. You just have to have the ideas flow. It's the same way here. I just need to have the lens of criticism on. I just need to go through and criticize my process and be as vindictive and be as unforgiving as possible. I can always dial it back. I can always set a standard and say, I went a little too far. There's not a whole lot of risk of doing that. And you dial it in. And with the workers, with the people who are doing the tasks, they're giving you feedback in a big part of the process. You don't have a lot of risk of messing that up too much as you set the standards.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Any other thoughts in red tagging?
Hi, this is Kim. I actually have thought, I was looking at that picture right there, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, if I went through my house and red tagged everything, like we wouldn't have anything left.
Right.
If you think about like your cupboards, like how many boxes of cereal do you really need? How many cans of soup do you need at one time? I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I have a standard, Kim. It's for our Tupperware. It's
exactly
if the Tupperware falls out of the cabinet, I throw it away. That's my standard. That's how I sustain. I've thrown away some very good pieces of Tupperware. I will have you know, but it's just how I do it to maintain the standard. So I'm totally with you. I think there's a lot. I think Marie Kondo might have a field day with their houses as well.
Yeah, like I have a bookshelf to the right of me that has probably 30 books on it that I haven't looked at in probably 10 years.
Right.
And I'm just like, as I'm thinking through all of this and our work processes, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit overwhelmed at the moment. Like how many things could just be gone?
Yeah.
Don't let it overwhelm you, but I'm glad that it's eye-opening, right? It's just you don't necessarily see something till you get aware of it, right? So relax. This is day one. Day two comes Wednesday. But I'm encouraged that you're reflecting and seeing, wow, hey, I got opportunities, and that's what we're here to do is partner with you and just kind of transfer that knowledge. Dana.
Yeah, I wanted to see if you have any suggestions, or maybe we'll get into this later or anything. So for recovery, we don't have a physical workspace. Our workspace is any hospital, funeral home, or anything like that. So do you have suggestions on how to better do a red tag audit in locations like that?
Yeah, I would reach out to them and see if they're interested in something like that. Obviously funeral homes have kind of a customer facing portion of it, and they have a more clinical facing portion of it as well. So this is well regarded in healthcare. It's well used in healthcare. So I think they might be open to looking at something like that, particularly if you're interested in thinking systemically, as we used earlier, and looking at from source, from beginning to end to end, how you can decrease defects, how you can improve efficiencies. If you have particular funeral homes that you deal with most, I understand that it's probably more distributed than that. Setting standards, we're going to get into standardization, and having standard ways of approaching these folks will be really helpful. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about 5S in a virtual space as well. So we can talk about how those communications, maybe you don't have a line of sight or agency into the funeral homes, but you have your own standards in place on how you field communications and whatnot.
If it's on location, like at the funeral homes or at the clinical setting, maybe it's the opportunity to partner with those customer clients, maybe share with them, hey, as Eversight, as we come in, it doesn't feel so good, this shared workspace. If that's the case, maybe it's a shared workspace, or you've seen opportunities more with a particular customer client, funeral home or clinician, and you can kind of highlight, I think there's an opportunity we could improve by taking this approach. So maybe it's that collaborative aspect. I'm trying to read between the lines of your question. So I don't know if I'm reading your mind proper or not, but I'm attempting to. Dana, how did I do?
So I will say you did well with this abstract of work that we do in recovery. But I will also say that it gets difficult to collaborate with our outside partners, such as hospitals and things like that, because we tend to use the space that nobody really thinks about in a hospital setting, which is the morgue. And so usually that's the last of their concerns, and it's hard to get them like, on board with anything with us. So that's why I was wondering, like, I mean, would it, like, going and doing a red tag audit with each recovery tech, would that make more sense to see kind of how they're doing it? Or
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's talk more about it later on. On Wednesday, we're gonna get into some breakout rooms, and I think that might be something David sits in on, discuss some of that stuff. Let's move forward. We just talked about the sort part of a 5S implementation. I love, this is my favorite part, is the set and order. I had 3 tools I just think are really cool. They don't cost a lot of money. They're not super hard to comprehend, but what they are is highly impactful. So we're going to talk about things called shadow boards. We're going to talk about things called floor markings, and then we're going to talk about things you've probably heard of called labels. So shadow boards are these really cool things of really helping you sustain, but also helping you have these things at point of action, to borrow David's phrase. You're going to create a place for these things. You're going to put everything in its place, as we talked about in the set stage. And then it also helps us sustain it because we can see when we've used, if this is something that we consume, if we've used this thing, or if it's out of standard. So if we look at this one in the office in the bottom, right? What do they use? A magic marker and a piece of cardboard. They taped it down to the desk, and now they know where everything is. They can say, the stapler's not in its correct place. They can bring it back to standard with just visual cues to help you do this. It doesn't take a lot of cognitive energy to do it. In a more medical setting, right? We've got all of these little shadow boards. They're actually cut out like little niches. This is in a Japanese hospital, so you can see what's missing, and it has that label to say, hey, this is the thing that's missing in my shadow board. So it's a nice workplace organization to help you know where things are. Shadow boards are also helpful because they help you in that sustain step. So I've got 2, I would say, very good 5S toolboxes. The one on the left has shadow boarding. You can see that these ratchet sets actually have like depressions where these things go, and the things on the right do not. So there's still a place for everything in its place. It's still very shined. There's no issue. Everything, you can see what things are, you can pick it out. But what's easier? Are they really going to have these ratchets in ascending order without having these depressions in here? So you can, I know mine would not be. I'm a loss with even with my socket set. It's horrible. And it has this nice shadow boards. So you can see here how just shadow boards, just these little visual cues, these little it goes right here because that's where it fits, helps you sustain and allows you to always have the thing in the correct place. It's also important when it's kind of meta 5S, right? Well, now we're dealing with the shining step of 5S, and you can actually put the set and order step to help you achieve the shine step. So particularly in like medical settings and in manufacturing, when you have to have cleanliness, you want to have a cleaning station, which has all the things you need to sweep up whatever it is you need to sweep up. And you can see here they've used other forms of visual management along with their shadow board to show you each of these and where it belongs in the manufacturing plant. So here, this is like the upline process. Those are red. The yellow is the midline process, and the green is the downline process. Let's say at the beginning of the assembly line, during the assembly line, at the end of the assembly line. So it's very easy to see with visual management whether or not this shovel is in the correct location. If it's with all the red stuff, maybe it's on the line, someone's using it. Well, that's against the standard. So shadow boards, in addition to just some coloring, is allowing us to maintain that shine step of 5S. And the next tool that I like are floor markings. And as you've probably guessed, we actually already use floor markings quite a bit. You can see here that we have handicap spots that we all are familiar with. And what do? They alert us to where things ought to go or where things ought not to go. So if you don't have a handicap spot, you don't park in the handicap space. If you are in a factory, you might have different pallets of different tools and equipment, and you would put the forklift in these particular areas, and then you would say, don't put it here, there's a fire extinguisher, and we might need to get to that, unless you work at Kroger, in which case they don't care. And then over here you can see that all it really takes is just some tape. So it's not rocket science, but it's that workplace organization that makes this a lot more effectual. And then my favorite, I've really just started doing this a lot more. I went to Lowe's and I saw this as a cool picture. Labels are a really effective way to create standards for where things go, particularly if you're using drawers. But what's really good at Lowe's and other places is that they don't just say what's there. They don't have the description of it. They have a picture of it too, right? So I go to Lowe's, I've got this widget that I want another one of because it broke. I don't know what it's called. I know it's hardware. I go to the hardware store, and rather than trying to figure out that it's a 1/4 inch, hex nut screw by whatever, I just look at the pictures, and that works for me. I just look at the pictures, and so that's kind of what the labels are. And anytime you can use pictures, which is a visual aspect of labels over written aspects, that would be a lot better. So even if we go back to this example, if they had a picture there, that would have been better than a label. If we go all the way back here, you can see I actually thought about that, and I put the pictures of what goes in those drawers. It's better than having labels. Now, David, you're saying someone threw something in the chat. Is that right?
Yeah, Lynn had a good example of fire trucks. Lynn, can you kind of add to that a little bit?
Yeah, on our heavy rescue trucks, they use foam cutout shadow boards for all of our tools. So one, when you do truck check, if something's missing, but two, it's always readily known where it's at for the speed of a recovery or a fire.
Yeah, fire EMTs and all that is very, very effective. There's actually an example I'm thinking of. I don't know if it's in our slide decks. Thinking about the voice of the customer and thinking. I'm just anytime. Actually, I have a slide that talks about how we use visual management much more when things are important to us, when the severity is high. One thing's in terms of thinking in terms of the customer that I know ambulances do. It's a little different, but they write ambulance backwards on the front of their ambulances. So that way, when you look in your rear view mirror, you see that it says ambulance. It's just another level of, they have really thought about a lot of these concepts. When I was in school, we actually had the Grand Rapids Fire Department come in and show us all of the lean applications that they use. So the Grand Rapids Fire Department has case study out on the line, out online. If you just search Grand Rapids Fire Department lean, you'll see all the examples of value stream mapping that they've used to reduce response times, and it's a really cool field of emergency response and lean. So thank you for that, Lynn. Let's talk about the other aspects of 5S, which is standardize and sustain. We've talked a lot about visual management. Let's continue to talk about visual management. We want to talk about standards as is versus should be. So in order to improve anything, we'll say this about 10 more times, we have to understand what we're doing currently. And then once we understand what we're doing currently, we can talk about what we can do in the future state. As is state, should be state. Visual controls, as we've been talking about, are highly effective. They require very little cognitive processing, and therefore we can act quicker on them. So visual management allows us to quickly make comparisons and act without much further investigation. So we've already encountered these. We can talk about the as is state versus the should be state of these office supplies. The as is state is that the stapler is outside of the standard. It does belong right here. So with just looking at the shadow board, not thinking anything else, we can correct that. We know that we've looked at visual management in the labels, in the red tag, right? We're using visual management to alert ourselves to what belongs and what doesn't belong, and then in floor markings as well. We use visual management everywhere, right? You know when your letter is been picked up by the mail, and you're alerting the postal carrier that you have a letter because you put that little flag up, right? You learned about visual management way back in kindergarten when they told you to raise your hand if you had a question, or to give you the bunny ears if you had to go to the bathroom, right? It's just these little things that the teacher was using, visual management, everywhere. They have things for blood tests. They call it pulling the rainbow, is when they pull different blood, and then each of these caps are different tests that they run for the blood. It helps the tech or whoever is doing the centrifuge or what have you run the correct test based on the visual key there. We also see that visual management is used in areas of critical decision making. We were just talking, Lynn just mentioned the fire engine, fire departments. We see it in roads, right? Is you know what a double yellow line is. You know what that's different than a dashed white line. You know what green means go in a stoplight. These are all things when you think about driving a car, the criticality of doing things right, of knowing when to stop, of knowing when to go, of staying in your lane, of crossing over lanes. The criticality is so high, it's natural that we rely on visual management, which takes so little mental processing because we can act quicker. So why not bring this into our lives? Why not bring this into our businesses and act quicker, make better decisions, be better leaders because of it? It gets back to that house of lean. We build the foundation, and we're talking about visual management. Well, we're starting to talk about the tools now too. And hopefully you can see that these tools are not just there, but they're enabling us to be better leaders, to have greater respect for people, and create a more performing organization. Now, before I worked at Kroger some odd years ago, I worked at Wendy's. And again, I didn't know it, but these guys were actually like lean. They were really good. And one of the things that they did is they had these visual work standards. So you think about it, how does an organization like Wendy's or Burger King or McDonald's make billions and billions of dollars a year? And then they hire a bunch of 16-year-old kids who have never worked before in their entire life. Well, how they do it is they use visual management, and they use lean techniques and operating philosophies to train them. So if they told me, hey, here's how you make a burger, you take 2 buns, you put the thing on it, whatever, I probably wouldn't have remembered. I'd probably make a lot of defects in the sandwiches. And the whole point of the franchise system is that you can go and get a Whopper wherever you go to Burger King, right? That's the whole deal of fast food, is that there's consistency across the organizations, no matter where you're at. So here, what they have is they have these visual standards that say, this is how you make our number 1. This is how you make our number 2. This is how you make our number 3. And what it does is it creates better standards. I know people have talked in their projects about moving SOPs and looking at implementing better standards for your organization. Definitely, anytime you can, incorporate a visual component to those standards. What it should look like when it's done, what it should like in process, what the communications look like. So it's better standards. It's easier to train. As I mentioned, if there's 16-year-old kids who have never worked before, how do you train them? You don't sit them down in a 15-hour Lean Six Sigma class, but you do give them some visual standards that they can make the product that the customer wants. It reduces defects because they always have a standard, and they can always go back to that standard and say, is this consistent with what it should be? And then that gets into that last part. It's easier to audit. Because it's easy to audit against what the standard ought to be, that should be versus as is state, it becomes very enabling. So that's the last of my work history for today. I worked at Kroger, I worked at Wendy's. You can also
Yeah,
start thinking.
go back to that last
Yeah.
slide, Mike. Just, it's, and I hope this resonates a little bit with, I know we have some training specialists, online with us today for the courses. And it's an opportunity to ask questions of, all right, how do we train? How do we onboard? Is it a written standard? Are there visual standards? Maybe it's an opportunity to convert also into video standards. It's great to work alongside of someone, but how much better than to deliver hey, here's how you do it. Let me show you. And it's step by step. And then a mentor, somebody to shadow. Hey, do you have any questions related to the standard? Maybe there's a better way. Okay, great. Let's update the standard. But without those things set in place, it's challenging on that training aspect.
Thanks, David. We do have a slide about video standards in a second too. But with visual management, again, in the lens of standardizing and sustaining our improvements in the organization, visual management is great. And we can start to even imagine or reimagine the world in which we live in, where, if you have a mailbox that's far away from your house, well, how do you know if the mail has gotten there? Or just a spring and a little card, you can actually set it so that when that mail carrier opens that box, you get alerted. So it's kind of the opposite of it. Instead of alerting the mail carrier that you have a package in there, so you can see the before versus after. They're now making refrigerators where you don't have to open the door. You've got visual management to see what's in the fridge, so you don't have to open that door and take a look. And then, of course, even pregnancy tests, right? Like you can look at this one here. You can see that, okay, I've got 2 lines. I don't know what those are. Maybe I have to go grab the box. Maybe I threw away the box. And now I don't know what that is. Versus something right here, you can see that the visual standard is right there. It's at what David calls point of use, right? It's right there. Just little cues. This is not groundbreaking stuff, but you can see how much better life would be if we did it. Things that are happening now is in the world of video editing. You've got these snazzy keyboards that denote different functions, different actions, shortcut keys based on, what the keys do in the program that you work in. And then you can even reimagine something like a boarding pass. Well, this is what it currently looks like, and you've got all kinds of stuff, and it's just nasty to look at, and you don't know, oh, I'm in group 3, I'm boarding last, I guess. Well, versus here, you're looking at something where it's telling you what your trip is, where your gate is, when you're boarding, where you're sitting on the airplane. It doesn't cost any more. It's a different printing configuration and not much more. But how much better are we at communicating and conveying information just by applying the principles of visual management? So that's 5S. We've talked about it a lot in a physical setting. I know many of us are, and really even in a production setting, manufacturing, I know many of us are in virtual and office settings. So what we want to do is take a look at that, and we can spend some time here. So how can it be applied in the office? We can go through all the desks and shelves and cabinets and really get rid of all the items that need to be discarded. I already mentioned that I've got my pencil case that I'm going to do after this workshop. So we can get rid of all that stuff. We can put a place for everything, and everything's in its place. Maybe it's just getting a little bit of electrical tape and putting that out on your desk so you have a location for everything. Again, no opportunity is too small. So any efficiency that can be gained, it's worthwhile to do it, even if it's just on a work desk. It's shine. We can just kind of, make everything clean and whatnot. Standardizing, setting rules and policies to sustain the first 3 parts, or standardize the first 3 parts, and then sustaining, constantly coming back to it and ensuring that we're all there. This is not an example of it. This is actually, we've taken this offline, but David and I worked with somebody whose desk looked very similar to this. He was a chemical engineer himself. How many coffee mugs do you need? 1, 2, how many?
1 for every day of the week.
1 for every day of the week. He's got his cereal bowl there. Is that really at point of use? He's got rolls of tape, 1, 2, how many rolls of tape do you need? How many corded telephones do you need? I won't belabor the point. We can see here, there's a lot of sorting that could be done. There's a lot of shining that could help this workstation. But this is just an example of what it could be if you don't 5S. You can look at a printing shop like a Kinko's or the packaging part of an office. They're using a lot of lean concepts over here. They've got this board that's denoting, I think, delivery times or inventory levels. They've got all of these different tapes that are, organized, and which tape you're going to pull. It looks very aesthetically pleasing. They have revamped what their organizational closet looks like, and they've even applied shadow boards and what appears to be the desk drawer. So obviously, I would want to work in a place that looks more like this than like this. All things being equal. If the paycheck was big enough, I'd work in a place like this. So what's really important, what David and I have been focusing a lot of our attention on, is how do we apply 5S to the digital workplace, right? Especially after COVID, especially after most of us are now working in distributed teams across geography and across time zones, and really interfacing through the computer. Well, in sorting, what we would want to do is look at all of our different things on our computer, programs and desktop icons and shortcuts and download folders. I know my download folder is just horribly configured right now. We would want to pull all of that out, figure out what's needed, and then figure out what we ought to still have on our desktop or in our folders. We would set an order. We would set a standard save location for things, whether we're downloading them online or from that SharePoint. We want to establish a standardized naming convention, which is something one of our participants talked about earlier, is having those CRMs all have the standardized naming convention. The information that's captured beneath that as well, meeting information, agenda, especially looking at like meetings. I get meetings left and right that's just like, it's that on the calendar and nothing else. You want to have a standard to say, well, what's the purpose of the meeting? What do I need to bring? What is the objective of the meeting? All of these things are setting the standards. Maybe they're number 4 standardized, maybe they're number 2 set in order. But what you want to do is you want to set good working standards and working practices so that in the virtual workplace, you can still be efficient and still have a lot of these principles applied between you and your coworkers. Shining, it's probably something that maybe you want to sit down with your IT team, just make sure that everything is up to date, all the software is running properly. There's not a whole lot you can do with Shining other than cleaning out your icons and your folders. Standardizing, I think a couple people talked about automation, talked about streamlining things. David and I do a lot of automation, whether it's just setting up rules within Microsoft Outlook to respond to emails or to filter emails or to clean spam folders, but having standards on not just how to maintain your files and your folders, but also how to react, how to respond to many of these things that happen is a big part of what you might call working standards, SOPs if it were. But essentially how you're going to interface within your virtual environment is just as important as what your virtual environment looks like from a cleanliness and an organizational perspective. So I want to pause here because I want to know what people think about the virtual space. I know that's kind of a lot of our participants today.
This is Ashley. I have done the standardization with automatic rules in my inbox, and it is a life changer for me because I used to have so many emails and I would get very overwhelmed. And then I implemented that, and now I have anywhere from 10 or less in my inbox, and it just makes, I don't know, my work days better. I feel more organized, and I can actually pay attention to things that I need to pay attention to, where the things that I only need it, I can go into that folder when I need it. I don't need it to see it all the time. So that was a huge bonus for me when I implemented that.
Great. Thanks, Ashley.
So I'll share a little story. too is I used to work at a bookstore called Borders, if anybody's heard of them.
Yeah.
Loved Borders, learned a lot there, as many of my teammates know. One of the concepts that we told people back when we used to get mail, paper mail, yes, that was a while ago, is we would tell people how to basically sort through the mail. And one of the things we talked about is we had 3 steps, act on it, file it, and toss it. But one of the things that I learned in there, which kind of really made me think about how I deal with all the emails, like Ashley had talked about, or even things in my desk area, talking about having safe space. I believe in transfer of energy. If it's distracting me, it's bad. One of the things they said is for every piece of paper at that point with mail that was sitting on your desk, it would distract you 7 times a day. So talking about like distractions and keeping things streamlined and easy for the eye. And it just, this whole concept kind of reminds me of that as well, is have the stuff you need front and center. This other stuff can be filtered towards the background. So I don't know, this just reminds me so much of that.
That's great. Thank you, Dawn. There's a concept I think we'll get into on day 3 called one piece flow. And it's this idea of you can only do one thing at a time. And one of the examples I've always thought of that is Ben Franklin, who was the Postmaster General, 1700s or whatever. That was his whole thing, is you have to process a letter one piece at a time. I'd never heard the 7 times a day be distracted by it, but that's definitely a concept we get into. And obviously it entails right into visual management. So thank you, Dawn.
Sure, I'm looking forward to that too.
Great. Well, thanks for that. One more slide on visual management here in the workplace. We've got the physical workplace, we've got the digital workplace. I'm not going to read every bullet, but just obviously there's differences. Obviously we can look for ways to apply the concepts in both of these areas. Definitely organization, just really, I think that's the takeaway, is think about how we can organize ourselves to be more effective. And obviously we're going to reduce waste by looking for things, by moving around, having standards in place, and knowing what those standards are is effective for our daily performance, but also for training new employees as well. So the next section is something about work cell design. I'm going to rush through it just a little bit. I don't think it's too pertinent for what we're talking about, but I think it's good to know, and you can kind of see how some of these concepts are applied. So what we'll see is in a lot of work cells, how people are moving in manufacturing is they're moving away from line assembly and they're doing these work cells. Dell computers is a great example of this, where they will build each of their computers to a particular design based on what the customer wants. You can see here my overhead that I painstakingly drew is got our buddy here, and this is what his work cell looks like. And you can see how everything's positioned, right? It's all within his grasp in this green area. And then he's got a couple things that are in the yellow area where you might have to reach for. And then nothing else really, except maybe that conveyor, is in the red area. So this is just really thoughtful design of a workstation on how he can be more effective. He's got ergonomic handles. He doesn't have to cock his hand to use them. He can just pull them down and have this nice relaxed neutral position of his hand. He's got good lighting. He's got heads up displays is what we might call it. He's got a lot of other things too. He's got these little boxes with labels on them, as we talked about. I'm a big fan of labels. He's got a standard location for each of his parts. He's got good lighting, and he's got a color ribbon. He's got 2 different, I think, soldering irons here, screwdrivers. I don't know what, but he's got color ribbons that denote which one is which. It's just a little visual cue to reduce processing time. Well, if you go to healthcare, here we've got some retinal surgery happening. We've got a lot of those same principles, right? We've got good lighting, you would expect. We've got heads up displays, as we just saw in the manufacturing example. We've got a shined workstation where there's nothing that ought not be there. And even as somebody who's in a clinical setting doing this stuff, right, the machine is set to his level. He's not hunched over. He's not contorting his body to the machine. The machine is set up for him. He's got ergonomic handles, see how his hands are in a nice neutral position. And he's got standard locations for all of his tools right over here. So again, we won't belabor the point. I think we've made the point a lot, but it is essentially in places where you have very operationally intensive practices. What you need is very good operational standards. Fast food's another example. You can see here, we've got standards for all the locations. You can see that there's a place for everything and everything's in its place. And we can see that the flow of the product, call it a food, goes from burger grill over here on the left. You get the cheese before you get the veggies. You get the veggies before you get the condiments. You can see here that it's moving in one direction. So it's good work cell design. Again, we don't have to belabor it, but as we start thinking about ourselves in terms of operations, we have to start thinking about ourselves in terms of operational excellence, how we can be better at the things we do, the processes we do. We can also, a little technical, but we can minimize the flow in work cells. So we saw in the fast food example, this person is moving from left to right. In this case, it's just some manufacturing process. And then they would have to take all these steps and walk all the way back, and they wouldn't be conferring value in any of those steps. So we would call that wasted activity, wasted time. Versus some new designs that they're doing are kind of U-shaped, where you go through all of these things, and just by changing the orientation of some of these machines, all of that walking is now actually, you have less waste because you're right back to where you started. And we can see this is really popular in medical device manufacturing. So here they're making some medical devices, and they've got this nice U-shaped design. So again, not really too pertinent, I don't think, for what we're talking about, but just how we're applying 5S in different and new ideas. So that gets us now to standard work. So visual management, it will come back in through everything that we do, but we're done talking about it right now. And we're going to switch over to standard work for the last 20 minutes. How's everyone feeling? Thumbs up, middle finger, what else? Good. A lot of head nods, a lot of yawns. Good. So as we talked about, we're just building that foundation. We'll get into the tools. The goal is to deliver customer value, and we need to create a good culture, a good foundation to do that. So standard work, 2 questions that standard work needs to answer is how long does it take to do the task? And what is the sequence of this task? If you don't, if you know what you have to do, but you don't know how long it takes to do it with any consistency, you really don't know what you're doing, right? And you can't improve upon that because you don't know what that current state expectation is. Vice versa, if you know how long it's supposed to take you to do it, and you don't know what exactly you're doing, you're even in a worse spot. So that's what we try to answer when we do standard work. One of the best ways to do standard work is to have working standards. Now, any standard is better than no standard. So we can do written standards where, what I'll do is, hey, step 1, you need to do this. Here's the tab that you're doing it in. This is what it does. This is how to update it. This is the source of the information. So you've got a lot there. You've got a data source. You've got where you're doing the task. In this case, updating some reports. And it's step 1, step 2, step 3. But it's a whole lot more effective to use, you guessed it, visual management and create either picture standards, visual standards, or what I like to do is video standards, particularly when we're doing things like communicating online and updating reports and whatnot. Just having different videos to say, hey, this is step 1 right here, and this is what it looks like. And now I can pull, I can see how long that video takes, and that's how long my time standard is associated with that particular task. Very, very important when you're talking about training new hires. When you're talking about tribal knowledge, if someone's retiring and you're worried because they have all this knowledge and you're going to lose it, this is something we face all the time. Well, what you need to do is you need to establish what those standards are. And one of the best ways to do it is simply record it. So what we're doing here, we're recording this for you. So if you ever want to go back and say, what was that thing they were talking about standards and videos? You can go and see this on the video. So that's probably the best practice in terms of creating work standards is creating videos, because you can criticize them if you do a new standard, or if you have a new way of doing it, new best practice, you can compare it from what you're doing previously, what that current state is, and you can make improvements and see what has merits and what doesn't. Now it's standard work. Without it, we don't know how to identify what needs to be improved because we don't have any consistency with how we're doing things currently. We don't know how to roll out improvements because we don't have any consistency with how we're doing things, which makes it difficult to say, well, I have to train person number 1, but person number 2 is already doing most of the things. It just gets convoluted, and you have a lot of variability in your process. It goes back to that. If you forgive me, if I go back to here, we have to have respect for people in order to deliver customer value. And if we don't have any consistency in what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're training people to do it and how we're holding them accountable for doing it the right way, what are we going to do? We're going to bash them over their head and we're going to say, you didn't do this correctly and it's your fault that this happened. Well, we have a whole lot more clout in doing that if we say you didn't follow the standard and we taught you the standard. Why didn't you follow the standard? What's probably more often the case is they weren't adequately trained to the standard. They were unaware of the standard. And as long as they adhere to that, and if something happens, we can say, well, now we have an opportunity for improvement and we can collaborate together because that standard was not enough to deliver our service level agreement with our customer. But until you have your people working with the standards and you're treating them fairly and really holding them accountable to the standards, you're going to be in this tension of, I'm talking to my people and my people are not delivering me the result that I want. Well, why is it? Is it because they're doing something wrong? Is it because they're not following the standard? Or is it because we just don't have a good enough process to deliver what our customers are expecting from us? So this is really important when it gets to people management, is if we can always come back and say, what's the standard? You followed the standard. We still didn't have the result we want. Now we can move forward. It's not the he or she's fault, right? It's now we can move forward and say, well, let's improve our process. And that gives us an opportunity to do that. Game time. We have 15 minutes left for today. I think we can knock this game out. So what this game is it's called Draw the Pig. So I asked everybody, I sent out an email on Friday to get some paper. And what I would ask you to do is draw a tic-tac-toe board on a piece of paper. And then once we do that, I'm going to give everyone about a minute to draw a pig. So if you could all react with like a thumbs up or something when you're ready with your piece of paper.
Quick question, do we draw our pig on the tic-tac board or outside of?
I didn't tell you to draw the pig yet. I will give you the instructions on how you should draw the pig.
Sounds good.
I see Dana, Ashley, Lynn, Dawn. I see a bunch of thumbs up. I think we're good to go, my friend.
Great. So now what I would like you to do is draw a pig following the directions here. And we could call this the standard work for drawing a pig. And then what I have here, I've shortened the link. This link was much longer. If you could take a picture of it with your phone and upload it to this URL. I know that's going to take a second. So
I've also put the link in the chat.
Great. This is another one of those things where it's way more fun, or it's way easier when you're not in a virtual setting. How do we share what our pigs look like?
I'm going to be really stupid here. How do I upload it? I gotta plug my phone in to upload it?
Yeah, that's what we were facing is a
Okay.
little clunky right now. At least it wasn't like download our app because I'm so tired of downloading our apps.
Take a picture.
I see Julie has navigated her way into it. It's a picture of what my daughter's toy looks like. Looks like a little pig. And this is Colleen's son's Paw Patrol toy over here in the foreground. I don't see any pictures being uploaded yet. Has anybody uploaded one? They think that they have uploaded one. I'm not seeing it. You guys really focusing on how your pigs look? Must be.
I have to go get a cord and everything to go upload.
Kim, I'm gonna try it by emailing it.
Oh,
to my
I got some pigs. This is great.
Email it to your Eversight email and then upload it.
Finding some workarounds. Got Melissa on there. I've got Aaron on there. Got Colleen on there. Lots of pigs.
Brenna and Melissa, I did re-enter the link in the chat, so try that link.
Couple more minutes. If we're struggling to upload it, you know, we're not going to die on it. We are just drawing a pig, so don't hurt yourself too much on it. There's no raffle for drawing the correct pig.
I'm trying to upload mine.
I like Dana's. I like Julie's. Here, I'll share it with everyone. So this is what we're seeing as we're sharing all of these different pigs. We see that a lot of them look very different, right? Julie drew her pig entirely within the middle square of the tic-tac-toe board. Dana's pig is missing a body. I'm very concerned about this pig. It's mostly the pig head. I see no squiggly tail. You know, some tails like Doreen's are very, very squiggly. Looks like a corkscrew. Others are smaller. And this is
but Michael, your standard work didn't talk about a squiggly tail.
Oh, it did not. And
No.
and as we reload again, oh man, Lauren, that's
I like Lauren.
That's some detailed work. That might be the new standard. What we see is that we have a lot of inconsistency across our work product. So even though we create a work standard, even though we've conveyed that uniformly to everyone, we have a different product as a result. So what we would want to do is improve that work standard. So again, now with 10 minutes left in our time together, I'm going to ask you to draw the pig again, but following this work standard. And again, using that tic-tac-toe board to start with. But if a couple of you could do that and re-upload it, we'll see if we get a more consistent work product as we do it. And David, just as a note for you to improve further, I think putting this link out when we take our first break would have been great. Lots of pigs. I like Brenna's. I've noticed consistency. Everyone's pig does seem to be smiling. There seem to only be happy pigs. I don't see any ill-tempered pigs. So as you draw those pigs, as you try to upload them, just want to know some feedback. Do you feel like the design, the output of your pig has changed significantly? Deep in thought.
Yeah, I think round one, this is my conclusion. Round one, we had some pigs that looked consistent because of your two examples on the webpage.
Oh, well, I mean, all
Maybe.
of them are facing left. I think that was part of the work, right? There's some, but yeah, right. There was some sort of convergence on that. Very good.
How are we supposed to upload them?
What was the question again?
How do we upload them?
We go to this link again. So the same link is a little tiny URL.
Okay.
.com.
And check the chat for a link that'll be easier to click on.
Ash, if you click on the link in your chat, it'll pull up a page for you on your computer. And then you can email yourself a picture. And then you can just drop and drag. You can grab it and drag it right in there.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Can we get the instructions back, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We should have mapped out that process, Dave.
Well, hey, this is a learning.
This is great. So has anyone uploaded their second round drawing? I don't know if I see any yet.
Brenna may have.
I had to restart because I messed it up the first time.
Oh, there's no mess up. It's okay.
That's called rework, and we will talk about that.
Melissa said in the chat, we got second piggy uploaded.
Thank you, Melissa.
See, yeah, we need standard instructions for uploading the picture.
Yeah. It's a meta lesson. It looks like Erin may have uploaded her second as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we can see that Melissa's and Erin's have general consistency. You can see their legs definitely look smaller than some of the legs that we have other ways. We can see their ears look the same.
Go ahead and refresh. Lynn mentioned number 2 is in. And I think Julie has number 2 in.
Great. I see Julie's. Julie's right there. I see Lynn's. Orientation, I'm not too worried about. Catherine's right there. So
My pig's on a diet.
Yeah, it's a slim pig. Great. So we can see here that generally across these examples, I'll just leave it at these 5, that we have a greater convergence. Everyone's smiling now. We can see that all the ears and the legs and the tail look very similar. And now what we want to do is ask, well, what would make this even better? How would we get convergence and get a consistent work product across all of our pigs every single time? And that is a question posed to the class.
I'd say, I mean, those are clear instructions, but maybe more clear? I don't know.
Go on.
What would be more clear? I said draw an arc for the eyes.
What the heck is an arc?
Oh.
We need a visual.
I heard visual.
What? Visual management.
People.
is that the theme of today? Oh man. So what if the work instruction came along with a expectation of what the finished product actually looked like?
Hold on, I got a hand raised by Alex.
Oh, I was just gonna say the intersection part, I wasn't understanding where to put my M's and W's. Like they were not
I'm with
on
you.
that
The
line.
words were inadequate. It's okay.
Right.
That's it.
So you weren't supposed to get them right is the other, and if you
Yeah, the
think of
instructions were meant to kind of lead you astray. It was kind of not meant to lead you there for this example. Yeah.
well, and when you think about training a new worker or having a best practice or having a consistency of product, how much effort would it take to show somebody new doing this for the first time what the pig was supposed to look like if you didn't have visual management? They would have to shadow you. They would have to see how you're doing that. They would ask clarifying questions like, what the heck is an arc and what does intersection mean? And all of these things go away if you just simply have a visual standard. So
what does success look like?
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about, that's a great one. What does success look like? Are we playing a winnable game? All of these concepts of empowering our people, having respect for people, visualization, particularly in the role of standardization, is absolutely key to create consistent performance. And then obviously, now that we've got consistent performance, improving is much easier. It's way easier to improve something that's consistent than inconsistent.
Brenna highlights in the chat area, capital E or lowercase e. What if you don't know what the meaning of cursive, right? Everyone's really, I love how this participation rallied. Everybody is like, throwing darts and like, oh, this round 1 and 2, right? Yuck. And then we land on round 3, like, oh yeah, I get it. What about a picture? Right. Melissa, what's a tangent? 100%. If the word means nothing without context, without meaning. But how often do you pick up a set of instructions that just, it doesn't click for you, Dawn, I see. Are you thinking about raising your hand, Dawn? Go ahead.
No, I was just responding to Melissa when she's like, what is a tangent? I'm like, yeah. I mean,
right.
I had to guess. I thought it made sense, but
guessing, does that feel good? No,
not at all. Not at all. I'm not a guesser. I like to know. Unless it's a project where we're trying to throw darts at stuff and find a best process or something. Then we'll guess, plant seeds, figure out what works, what doesn't. But something specific like this, no, I don't like to guess at all.
couple questions coming in. Michael, go ahead, and then Doreen next.
So people actually want to know what a tangent is. Brandon is actually asking. A tangent is a line that passes through this, or it touches the circumference of a circle, but does not pass through it. That's what that is. But to Colleen's point, dumb it down. Well, are we respecting people if we're giving them things that they don't understand and then holding them accountable to the things that we've given them? Well, I gave you the instructions. I was very specific. Someone asked for a more specificity with the arc of a mouth. Someone else is asking for less specificity with the tangent line. So we can see here that we've got different expectations across all the people using it. And how much easier is it one, we need to understand what those expectations are when we're respecting people, when we're building working standards. But obviously having visual is a huge part of good standards.
Okay, Doreen, what you got your hand raised?
I was just going to say, I don't know if this is an intentional part of this exercise, but also making sure that the instructions are readily available, because you would switch to the other screen and I'm like, put the instructions back. I'm only halfway done. I needed those instructions in front of me so that I could continue to finish mine.
Accessibility. You're
we
right,
call that
100%.
We call that a conspicuous standard. It needs to be conspicuous where you can see it. And it's kind of like the scoreboard, right? You don't have to go looking for a scoreboard at a sports ball game. It's right there.
Michael, one more raised hand from Melissa, and then we're